Imagine standing at the edge of something a human hand was never meant to move. Close your eyes and try to feel the scale, rock the size of a building. Its face still scored by chisels. Its bulk still clinging to the earth as if the mountain itself refused to let it go. You can hear a distant wind, the whisper of 1,000 hammer blows that are now dust. That silence, that sudden absence of motion where there ought to have been motion, is the first thing most ancient wonders teach you. We're used to ruins as the records of success, temples finished, towers that pierced the sky, cities that once hummed with commerce. But there's a different kind of archaeology, a quieter one, where a civilization's ambition hits a wall and the story stops mid-sentence. These are the sites where human plans met raw physical limits, where choices or catastrophes or vanished methods left colossal objects half-formed, and whole questions hanging in the air. These places are unnerving because they split the usual script. They force us to imagine not only what people could achieve, but also where they ran into something they couldn't overcome, or where they deliberately stopped, and for reasons lost to time. Today, I want to start our long journey across those impossible places. We'll move from a Chinese hillside with blocks that dwarf modern cranes, to a city under the ground carved to shelter tens of thousands. We'll sit with the awe of scale and the gnawing curiosity. Who decided to try this? And why did they stop? The Yangshan Quarry, ambition frozen in the living rock on a hillside not far from a great river. Workers set to a task that read like a dare against geology itself. Imagine an army of men, not with earth-moving machines, but with iron chisels, sliding wedges, ropes, and patience. Over years, generations, perhaps, they cut faces into the mountain. They worked the stone until 3 or 4 vast blocks began to take shape. Not boulders, not mere foundation stones, but planned monoliths that would weigh as much as entire modern ships. The largest block there was never fully freed. It's still as if the rock itself took one look at what the human team wanted to do and said, "Not without my consent." The cut surfaces are precise. The corners are squared. You can see the craft in every plane, but the block rests in place, an island of human geometry in a sea of bedrock. Why? The blunt answers are immediate. Maybe the planners miscalculated. Maybe logistics failed. Maybe the political will evaporated. Those are possible, but consider the decisions implied by starting at that scale. They didn't only plan a monument, they planned a problem. How to move 10,000 or 16,000 tons across terrain without modern cranes. How to lift, set, and align a weight that would crush smaller technologies flat. To try and then stop is not merely failure. It is a confession that some unknown factor, later, now lost, made continuation impossible, or that priorities shifted so radically that the labor and risk were no longer worth the symbolic payoff. Stand in front of that half-carved behemoth and you feel something complicated. Admiration for the boldness, frustration for the unfinished promise, curiosity about the vanished knowledge. Did the builders have a technique they later abandoned? Or did they begin before they had answers? Either possibility is strange. Either the project was hubris, or the world once contained methods we no longer remember. Both are unsettling in their own way. Whatever the reason, the quarry remains a frozen experiment, a deliberate attempt to force human will on the landscape, and a record of where that will reach its limit. That is what makes it so haunting. It's a monument not to completion, but to the moment a culture felt its own edges. Daringkuyu, an underground city that refuses sunlight and asks nothing of it. From a stalled battle with megaliths, imagine shifting underground into a different kind of audacity, not lifting stone up and out, but excavating inward and down. In a quiet town, a man pokes a hole in his cellar wall and discovers a passage. One hole, one curious step, and the earth opens into chambers that would swallow a modern stadium's worth of people. Stairs wind down, rooms branch off, carved with care. Tunnels twist like the inside of a watch, precise and purposeful. This place is not a cave that happened naturally and then was used. It is planned architecture, levels of rooms, stables, storage, places for worship, communal kitchens, ventilation shafts that carry air like lungs carry breath. Some shafts double as wells. Massive, round stone discs could be rolled to seal corridors. The builders thought about every detail needed to live down here for months at a time. The city functions like a living organism that relocates its vital organs underground. Why would you build an entire town beneath the surface? The immediate answer is defense. In eras when raiding bands could sweep down trade routes, or conquerors could sack a city in a day, submerging your life beneath the ground was survival strategy at scale. But the scale of this task, carving tens of thousands of cubic meters of volcanic rock using human hands and basic tools, hauling spoil upward, ensuring ventilation and water, suggests not just calculation, but cultural choice. This was not a one-off panic hideout. It's a long-term refuge designed to sustain community life, religious practice, and agricultural staples. It maps a world where living underground was an extended season, not merely an emergency. Imagine the logistics, the lamps that lit the workshops and kitchens, the smoke management that required strategic shafts, the food storage rooms sized for many mouths and long winters. The city's planners were engineers of human endurance. Their skill was not in lifting the impossible up, but in carving into the possible and making it livable. Walking inside such tunnels today, passing rounded doorways and cup-shaped rooms, you feel intimacy at scale. You imagine families learning to speak in echoes, children tracing finger marks on wall niches, elders reciting the old roots. The architecture becomes a library of social strategies, how to share air, water, warmth, privacy. It's proof that when the surface world grows dangerous, human ingenuity migrates and adapts quietly, thoroughly, and beautifully. What both places ask of us: one is a challenge to gravity, the other a solution to fear. One froze at the threshold of movement, the other converted motion into hollowed space. Both are monuments to a kind of human insistence we rarely consider. Not only the insistence to build, but the insistence to try what seems impossible and to accept the consequences when limitations show themselves. When you study ruins, you're used to narratives of triumph and collapse, but there's meaning in the incomplete and in the subterranean. They both expose choices. Someone at Yangshan chose to risk an experiment in scale. People at Daringkuyu chose to invert living and make their survival subterranean. They forced the same question onto us. What does a civilization sacrifice for its vision of permanence? What does it keep to survive? These places also change how we define success in ancient engineering. Success isn't only a finished stele or a thriving city. It can be the knowledge gained from the attempt, the culture that structured lives around an idea, and the lessons buried in the silence. There's an unromantic but true beauty in that. Human will does not always triumph over matter. Often it negotiates. Sometimes the negotiation ends in a new form, the underground city, and sometimes it ends with a halted quarry block. That becomes a monument to human daring. If you feel the itch to ask how they did it, how they planned, the tools they used, the numbers of hands needed, that curiosity is the point. Archaeology isn't just about objects. It's about the choices those objects record. And these first two sites, the mountain that refused to yield and the city that chose to disappear beneath the earth, are our first lessons in this series. How enormous ambition meets stubborn material, and how survival sometimes hides in silence instead of monumentality. We'll cross continents to meet a vanished culture that cast bronze masks like nothing else on Earth, faces that look almost alien, eyes bulging as if designed to see into other worlds. And then we'll fly over deserts to find circles so perfect you can only read them from the sky. You'll begin to see a pattern. Sometimes mystery is in what people built, and sometimes it's in what they left deliberately blank. There are discoveries that puzzle archaeologists, and then there are discoveries that look like they wandered into our history from someone else's story entirely. Picture yourself standing in a quiet museum hall in Sichuan province, China. The light is dim, the display glass cold and clear, and behind it rests a face, a bronze face almost a meter across, with eyes that bulge outward in long tubular cones, as if sculpted by a hand that had never studied the shape of human beings. The lips curve downward in a thin, geometric line. The ears stretch out like abstract wings. The eyebrows sit like sharp blades. Nothing about it resembles the Shang dynasty to the north, or any other known Chinese civilization of the Bronze Age. If you stumbled across this in an alien museum in a science fiction story, you wouldn't think twice about its origin. But the strange truth is that these artifacts were made by human hands, except the civilization that crafted them left behind almost no written record, no known literature, no monuments that explain their mythology, and no clear descendants who preserved their traditions. This is the mystery of Sangsing Dewey, and to understand it, you have to imagine an entire civilization emerging like a spark in the dark, bright, brilliant, and suddenly gone. A discovery that should have changed history. The story begins with an accident, not an expedition, not a royal excavation, but a farmer with a shovel in 1929 digging a trench near his home. His shovel struck something hard, not rock, not pottery shard, but polished jade, intricate, smooth, out of place. He felt around and found more. He lifted out flakes of ancient artistry, but without the tools or context to understand what he'd uncovered. He simply kept what he liked and left the rest buried. Archaeologists eventually followed, but in those early days, communication, funding, and direction were limited. The site slept again for decades. Then the 1980s arrived. This time, excavation teams uncovered not one artifact, not a handful, but thousands buried in deep sacrificial pits. Gold masks, bronze heads, ivory tusks, jade blades, miniature trees cast from metal, and most famously, masks with enormous protruding eyes that seemed designed not for humans, but for beings who needed to look far beyond the ordinary. What emerged was not a dusty collection of relics, but the fingerprint of a full civilization, one unlike anything recorded in Chinese history books, a civilization that should have changed our understanding of the ancient world. And yet, almost everything about it remains mysterious. Bronzes that defy their age. Let me give you a sense of the scale of what was found. You're standing in a pit filled with fragments. The workers begin to clear the dirt, and something golden emerges. Not jewelry, but a massive mask of hammered gold, wide enough to cover a giant's face. Next to it, a bronze statue over 2 meters tall, its arms curled forward as if presenting an offering to someone or something now vanished. The details are unbelievable for a Bronze Age culture. Multi-piece casting techniques, interlocking sections fitted like machine parts, thin metal work with precision, curves, alloy compositions that imply controlled high-heat furnaces. When these objects were displayed, metallurgists stared in disbelief. These weren't rough castings hammered into shape. These were deliberate, complex, multi-stage constructions. And then there were the masks, long tubular eyes, wide staring faces, stylized geometric proportions, faces that do not resemble the people who lived in the region at that time. It raises the question scholars still whisper today. Who were these masks meant to depict? A god, a king, a spirit, something else? The truth is, no one knows. And that's only the beginning. A culture that spoke without words. Here's the unsettling part. Unlike Egypt, unlike Mesopotamia, unlike the Yellow River civilizations, Sangsing Dewey left no written language that we can read. No papyrus scrolls, no stone inscriptions, no clay tablets. Imagine a society so advanced in metalwork, so precise in ritual craft, yet so silent in written record that its entire worldview must be reconstructed from its art alone. It's like trying to understand a vanished kingdom only from the masks they carved, masks that look nothing like any culture known around them. You can feel the strangeness pressing at your mind. You can feel the gap in our knowledge widening. And maybe that's the most haunting part. Not what we found, but what we didn't. A culture sealed in sacrifice. The 2 major pits uncovered in the 1980s were filled with broken objects, deliberately broken. Masks smashed, statues shattered, ivory burned, jade snapped. This wasn't random destruction. It was ritual. A systematic burial, as if the culture took everything meaningful, everything sacred, everything that represented their gods or rulers or ancestors, and committed it to the earth. Why? Several theories circle around the pits like vultures. A catastrophic event forced the inhabitants to leave. An invasion wiped out the ruling class. A climate shift or earthquake disrupted the region. A ritual transition, a cultural rebirth, required burying the old world. But the most interesting theory is the simplest. The people left, not because of collapse, but because they relocated, and they took everything with them but the sacred. If they moved, where did they go? What drove them to obliterate their own past? And why did the style never appear again in any known Chinese tradition? Standing before those pits, you feel the weight of a civilization deliberately sealing its heartbeat underground. It is less an archaeological site and more a time capsule of a world that chose silence. The strange non-connections, Sangsingdui's strangeness lives in its isolation. It didn't resemble the Shang dynasty, which flourished at the same time in central China. No shared motifs, no shared symbols, no similar bronze style. It's as if two civilizations existed side by side on the same landmass and never influenced one another. That's unusual. Ancient cultures borrow, they adapt, they imitate, but Sangsingdui stands apart, almost aggressively so. The masks with long tubular eyes, the hollow bronze trees, the giant standing figures with elongated limbs, the finely cast heads with angular, blade-like features. All of them scream, we were not like them. We were something else. It's this otherness that inspires alternate theories, some speculative, some fringe, some imaginative, but all born from the same fact: nothing else like it exists. Not in China, not in Asia, not anywhere on Earth. The bronze tree, a myth in metal. One of the most astonishing finds at Sangsingdui is the bronze tree. 4 meters tall, branches curling like serpents, leaves shaped like fire, ornaments dangling from the tips. Some scholars think it represents the tree of life, a symbol common across ancient mythologies. But this tree is engineered with joints and connections like a mechanical structure. It doesn't mimic nature. It's something conceptual, something ritualistic, something symbolic on a grand scale. It was made to stand tall in ceremonies, reflecting firelight from bronze leaves that shimmered like living metal. When you look at it, the word civilization feels too small. This is art, religion, engineering, storytelling, mythology, all fused together in a single object. And yet, we don't know what it meant. Imagine knowing the Mona Lisa existed, but having no concept of human portraiture. Imagine finding a cathedral without knowing what a religion is. That's what Sangsingdui feels like. A message written in a language we can't interpret. A civilization that disappeared without a trace sometime around 1100 BCE. Sangsingdui collapsed or relocated. Archaeologists argue about the cause, but what's important is what happened afterward. Their culture vanishes completely. No successor dynasty that used their imagery. No later cities adopting their style. No myths referencing their gods. Their unique motifs, the eyes, the faces, the masks, appear nowhere else in China's vast historical record. It's like a flame blown out, leaving only smoke. What remains is not a broken trail of imitation, but a sudden, clean absence. As if someone turned a page and the entire civilization faded between paragraphs. Why Sangsingdui feels so unsettling? Here's the truth many archaeologists admit quietly. Sangsingdui is not just mysterious, it's uncomfortable. Because it does not fit the expected timeline. It displays metalwork skill equal to, or possibly beyond, known Bronze Age capabilities. Its art has no clear genetic or cultural parents. Its disappearance is too clean, too total, too silent. It forces us to accept that history is not a linear story. It is a tapestry with missing panels. And sometimes, a whole culture can rise to extraordinary heights, create works that look like nothing else before or after, and then vanish so thoroughly that only a few buried masks survive to testify. Sangsingdui is a reminder of how fragile civilizations truly are. All it takes is one flood, one invasion, one shift in power, one environmental catastrophe, or one cultural transformation, and an entire worldview can disappear. And all we're left with are eyes of bronze staring at us across 3,000 years, asking questions we can't answer. We leave the bronze masks behind and rise into the sky, because our next mystery can only be seen properly from above. Across the deserts of Jordan and Syria lie enormous stone circles, perfect in geometry, vast in scale and almost invisible from the ground. No one knows who built them. No one knows why. And the frightening question is this: were they meant to be seen by human eyes at all? There are mysteries you can touch: stone blocks, bronze masks, underground cities. But some discoveries cannot be understood from the ground at all. You can walk across them, stand inside them, even sleep beside them, and never realize you are standing within the outline of something vast, something deliberate, something ancient. To understand these next structures, you must rise into the sky, high enough that the land below begins to flatten, high enough that the irregularities of terrain fade into patterns, high enough that the earth begins to reveal its forgotten geometry. Because scattered across the deserts of Jordan and Syria are shapes so strange, so precise, and so large that they only come into focus when seen from above. Hundreds of meters across, perfectly circular, built with stone walls just a meter high, walls that cling to the desert floor, like scars made by an ancient hand. These are the big circles, and the strangest thing about them is not their size, not their perfection, not even their age. The strangest thing is that we don't know who these circles were meant for, because from ground level, they are almost invisible. Imagine an architect designing a building that cannot be seen except by a creature flying overhead. Imagine a society investing labor into a shape they themselves could never truly view. Imagine a culture that created symbols too large for human eyes to grasp. That is the mystery of the big circles. And to understand them, we must start where their discoverers did, in the cockpit of an airplane. A discovery made by accident in the sky. It was the 1920s. British Royal Air Force pilots were flying low over the Middle Eastern desert, mapping routes, photographing terrain, doing the mundane work of early aviation. The landscape below was harsh and barren, broken only by dry riverbeds and scattered rocks. Then a pilot noticed it. A perfect circle, huge, too huge to be natural. He circled around, taking more photographs. Then he saw another, and another. Soon there were dozens, all nearly identical, all enormous, all impossibly round. But when ground teams went to inspect them, they found nothing obvious. Rings of low stones, barely rising from the desert floor. Not fortifications, too low. Not corrals, too large. Not houses, no entrances. Just circles. The pilots, from their elevated view, had stumbled upon something that thousands of people had walked past for centuries, without ever noticing. It was humbling and unnerving. What kind of ancient builder would design a structure that humans couldn't properly see from ground level? Unless it wasn't meant for humans. The scale that doesn't make sense. Let's talk size. The big circles are enormous, 400 meters or more in diameter, roughly the length of 4 football fields laid end to end. Yet their walls are small, made from unworked stones stacked without mortar. They do not enclose livestock. They do not protect villages. They do not hold buildings. And yet, the circles are almost perfectly geometric, not roughly round, not circle-ish, but precise, with deviations measured in centimeters. This is what unsettles archaeologists. How does a prehistoric society, with no aerial view, no satellites, no drones, no high vantage points in flat desert terrain, create enormous circles with such mathematical perfection? To build one requires a fixed center point, a method to measure radius precisely over hundreds of meters, perfect orientation across terrain, dozens of workers aligned to a single design. This is not casual construction. It is purposeful, careful, and unified. Yet there is no sign of a village or settlement that would justify such massive communal effort. Why? What function could possibly require this much precision at this scale, yet use such minimal walls? It's like building a cathedral out of twigs. The curious consistency across deserts. Now here is where the mystery deepens. These circles are spread across Jordan and Syria, separated by miles, sometimes by mountain ranges, sometimes by deep valleys, and yet they are nearly identical in size. They follow the same architectural logic. They use the same construction method. They lack entrances in the same way. This uniformity suggests one of two things. One, a single culture spread across a vast region built them all. But which culture? And why leave no inscriptions, no carvings, no artifacts? Why no mention in historical texts of circles spanning miles of desert? Or two, multiple groups copied the same tradition or ritual blueprint. But if so, what was that tradition? What story? What belief? What purpose was important enough to inspire such consistent, massive architecture? yet left no trace in oral or written history? Either option is strange. History usually leaves trails. Cultures share motifs. Architectural styles evolve. But the big circles are like whispers from a vanished world, spread wide, yet silent. The desert holds its secrets. Well, dating the circles is extremely difficult. They contain no wood for radiocarbon testing, no organic layers trapped under walls. Some scholars estimate they could be at least 2,000 years old, possibly older, perhaps even Neolithic. Nearby, other ancient desert structures such as desert kites, huge stone funnels used for hunting, date back more than 9,000 years. So it's not impossible that the big circles share similar antiquity. But unlike kites, which clearly served a purpose, the circles defy explanation. You stand inside one, and the desert stretches in all directions. No monumental feeling, no acoustics, no sense of enclosure, just openness, which leads to the strangest theory of all. Were the big circles never meant to be seen from ground level? Let's consider the possibility. Most monuments are built to be experienced. Temples, cathedrals, tombs, palaces, plazas humans build for human eyes. But the big circles, their true form is only visible from above, from a vantage point ancient people should not have had, unless the circles weren't meant for human eyes. Some archaeologists cautiously suggest they could have served as signals, as markers, as symbols in vast ritual landscapes, as celestial diagrams visible from hills, as territory markers for nomadic groups, or even as messages to gods believed to dwell in the sky. Ancient cultures often imagine their gods looking down from mountaintops, clouds, the sun, or the heavens. To them, a perfect circle carved into the land might have been a sacred sign, a ritual calling card, a cosmological map, or a boundary drawn not for humans, but for divine watchers. It's not that ancient people built for aircraft, it's that they built for gods, or for the sky itself. Theories that try and fail to explain everything. Here are the leading theories, none of which fully solve the mystery. 1. Boundaries or territorial markers. Enormous circles, marking seasonal grazing territories or tribal boundaries. But then why? The precision? The lack of entrances? The uniform diameter? This theory feels incomplete. To ritual or ceremonial sites, large circular open-air temples. But there are no altars, no offerings, no artifacts, no signs of gatherings. 3. Astronomical markers. Ancient observatories or solar calendars. But their orientation does not consistently align with solstices or celestial events. 4. Symbolic geoglyphs. Land art created for religious or cosmological reasons, meant to be viewed from nearby hills. This is possible, but the uniform size remains hard to explain. 5. Structures that supported something now missing. Large wooden structures or tents that have decayed. But there are no post holes, no burnt remains, no foundation patterns. The circles stand naked, stone outlines without context. And that emptiness is the part that gnaws at historians. Something is missing, some crucial piece of the story, some function that made sense to the builders but has been erased by time. Why the circles are so disturbing to scholars? It's simple. They are too big to be trivial, but too empty to be understood. If they were small, we'd call them shrines. If they were tall, we'd call them walls. If they contained artifacts, we'd call them ceremonial. But they are nothing but shape and scale. Minimal effort in height, maximum effort in width. This contradiction makes the circles feel like a language we can't read, a sentence without words, a message without meaning, a monument without memory. It forces us to admit that ancient people built things we still do not understand, not because they were primitive, but because their worldview was utterly different from ours. They were not less intelligent, they were simply playing a different game, and the rules have been lost. We leave the desert behind and dive deep, literally, beneath the waters of a lake, where a monument the size of a battleship rests silently on the lakebed. Hundreds of tons of basalt, shaped by human hands, now drowned far below where any ancient builder should have been able to work. Which raises the haunting question, was it always underwater? Or did the world around it change in ways we still don't understand? There is a certain silence that only exists underwater, a silence deeper, heavier, older than anything you can feel on land. A silence that holds not just the absence of sound, but the weight of time itself. Beneath the calm waves of the Sea of Galilee, that silence hides something vast, something unlikely, something impossible. A mountain of stone built by human hands. Thousands of tons of basalt arranged into a perfectly shaped mound. A cairn the size of a modern warship, lying on the lakebed where sunlight fades into murky blue. No carvings, no inscriptions, no pathways, no clues. Just a colossal pile of carefully arranged rocks sitting in a place ancient builders should not have been able to reach. Its presence raises questions that ripple outward through history, geology, and human imagination. Who built it? Why? And most importantly, was it always underwater? Because if it wasn't, then the entire landscape of ancient Israel was once different from what we see today. And if it was, then the builders did something far more extraordinary than we have ever credited. Bronze Age humans 4. Let's descend. A discovery hidden from human eyes until the 21st century. In 2003, a team conducting sonar mapping in the Sea of Galilee, a freshwater lake in northern Israel, had no intention of rewriting history. They were looking for geological formations, fault lines, underwater sediment patterns, routine work. But then the sonar returned something unexpected. A massive cone-shaped anomaly rising 9 meters, 30 feet from the lakebed. It had straight edges, a symmetrical slope, a base nearly 70 meters wide, as large as 2 basketball courts side by side. No natural formation matched it. When divers descended to examine it, they confirmed what the sonar suggested. It was man-made. The structure was composed of huge basalt boulders, some weighing hundreds of kilograms, stacked carefully without mortar, forming a steep-sided, intentional mound. The divers surfaced with the same stunned question: what is a gigantic man-made stone monument doing at the bottom of a lake? The structure, a 60,000-ton mountain of stone. Let's talk scale. This is not a small cairn, not a ritual pile of stones, not something a few people could build. This thing is enormous. Height, 9 to 10 meters, about a 3-story building. Diameter, approximately 70 meters to 130 feet. Weight, roughly 60,000 tons of basalt. 60,000 tons. That is heavier than a destroyer-class naval ship, heavier than the stones of Stonehenge, many times over, heavier than most ancient monuments outside of Egypt or Baalbek. To build it, ancient workers would have needed to quarry the stones to transport them without wheels. In most cases, to shape the mound in a precise cone, to stabilize it so it would not collapse even if the structure was built on dry land, which is possible. Moving such massive amounts of basalt is an engineering feat. But if it was built underwater, then it represents something even more extraordinary. Underwater engineering thousands of years before such work should have been possible. And that puzzle leads to a bigger question. Was it always underwater? This is the heart of the mystery. We cannot simply assume the monument was built beneath the lake, because the Sea of Galilee has changed dramatically over the last several thousand years. Water levels have risen and fallen with climate cycles, earthquakes, and shifting rivers. So there are 2 main theories. Theory 1, the monument was built on dry land. This is the conservative view, and it's reasonable. During the Bronze Age, around 2000 BCE, the lake level may have been much lower. The structure could have been built on a hill or shoreline that was later submerged. Clues supporting this, nearby sites from the Bronze Age, show settlements close to ancient shorelines. The lake's depth has fluctuated significantly over millennia. The base of the cairn shows no evidence of being built underwater. If the cairn once stood above water, it might have served as a burial mound, a ceremonial platform, a marker for a nearby settlement, a territorial monument. But this theory leaves a major problem. If it stood on land, where is everything else? No houses, no tools, no pottery shards, no human remains, no walls, no artifacts, nothing, just a mountain of basalt. Civilizations do not build massive stone monuments in isolation. They leave footprints. This one leaves none, which leads to the second theory. Theory 2, the monument was built underwater. At first this seems unthinkable. How would Bronze Age people, with no scuba gear, no diving bells, no waterproof construction methods, build a structure underwater? But there are hints. Basalt boulders behave differently underwater. They become easier to move due to buoyancy. They can be slid, rolled, or floated with primitive rafts. They settle naturally when piled. Underwater construction is difficult, yes, but not impossible. And there's another haunting possibility. The builders may not have needed to go deep. Maybe the water level was only waist high or chest high. Maybe they built during a drought, when the lake receded dramatically. Maybe the monument was constructed in the shallows for a ritual purpose involving water itself. If so, then the structure wasn't built despite the water. It was built because of it. Perhaps it marked a sacred spot or ritual lake sanctuary, a symbol to be seen from boats, a place for offerings to deities, a seasonal shrine revealed and hidden by changing water levels. Water has always carried spiritual significance: life, death, purification, rebirth. The people who built this monument may have intended it to be swallowed, revealed, swallowed again, in a cycle tied to nature or the divine. But if that's the case, why build something this massive? Why exhaust a community's strength on an underwater shrine? Why create something no one would ever see in full? Unless the visibility of the structure was not the point. Unless it held meaning to a culture whose worldview has not survived. Engineering without explanation. Let's imagine the builders. Men and women hauling basalt boulders as large as refrigerators. Sweat, strain, shouts, ropes biting into hands, stones rolling and splashing. How do you coordinate hundreds of people to build something underwater or in mud? It requires leadership, planning, labor specialization, community investment, shared belief in the monument's purpose. This implies an organized society, not a small tribe. But where is that society in the archaeological record? Where are their settlements, their pottery, their tools, their burial sites? They are either destroyed, undiscovered, or they never existed. Where we expect them to, each answer raises new questions. The more we understand the cairn, the less sense it makes. What was its purpose? Let's examine the leading theories. 1. A burial mound. Many cairns around the world mark tombs, but no human remains have been found here. And building a 60,000-ton underwater grave is unique, to say the least. 2. A ceremonial structure. If it was built near water, it might have been a ritual site, but the size is excessive compared to known Bronze Age ceremonial markers. 3. A navigational landmark. A stone beacon might help boats navigate shallow areas, but it would only be useful above water, unless ancient water levels were radically different. For a foundation for a tower or structure. Some have suggested that the cairn was a foundation for a wooden structure now long decayed, perhaps a tower overlooking the lake. But the symmetry and scale of the mound argue against a purely practical use. 5. A monument to something we no longer understand. This is where speculation grows. Perhaps an offering to a water deity, a territorial claim by a lost culture, a ritual mound aligned with celestial or seasonal events, a symbolic mountain representing creation myths without inscriptions. We may never know. What remains is the stone, silent, heavy, unmoved by time. But though the stone does not speak, its presence screams a truth. Ancient people did things we still cannot explain. The most unsettling possibility. There is one final theory, rarely discussed in academic circles, but whispered among those who study ancient landscapes. What if the watershed shifted suddenly? Not gradually, not over centuries, but within a human lifetime. What if earthquakes, landslides, tectonic shifts, or catastrophic floods reshaped the Sea of Galilee dramatically? What if the builders lived near a shoreline that no longer exists? What if their world was swallowed by rising water? Their homes, their shrines, their stories, all drowned, leaving only one structure massive enough to withstand the floodwaters. The cairn, a monument that survived while everything else was erased. If that happened, then this structure becomes something more profound. A tomb not for a person, but for an entire vanished world. We leave the silent depths of the Sea of Galilee and travel to a place where mystery rises, instead of sinks, to the rolling hills of Africa, where stone walls twist, circle, and tower without mortar, forming a city so advanced that early explorers refused to believe Africans built it. A city with a purpose still debated. A city whose walls echo with lost authority and forgotten ritual. From the rolling stone fields of ancient dolmens, we now travel east, farther back in time than the pyramids, farther back than the great stone circles, farther even than most writing itself. Here, in the dust of southern Mesopotamia, lies one of humanity's oldest unsolved puzzles, one that doesn't tower above the land or stretch across the earth, but instead fits in the palm of your hand. Unlike colossal ruins or massive blocks carved from bedrock, this mystery is small, almost delicate, and yet, in its simplicity, it might be the strangest one of all, because the people who made them over 7,000 years ago chose to sculpt not themselves, not animals, not gods in familiar forms, but beings with reptilian faces, and no one knows why. Welcome to the story of the Ubaid lizard figurines, enigmatic clay statues that challenge our ideas about early civilization, early religion, and early identity itself. A civilization older than history. To understand these figurines, we have to step into a world so old that modern timelines almost fail to grasp it. Long before Sumerians rose in the river valleys, long before cities like Ur and Eridu became the centers of myth and memory, another culture lived, farmed, traded, built, and worshipped here. We call them the Ubaid people. They lived between 5000 and 4000 BC, before writing, before monumental stone temples, before kings and empires, and yet they weren't primitive. Archaeology shows organized settlements with stone foundations, early temples with tripartite halls, advanced pottery painted with geometric precision, irrigation-based agriculture, regional trade networks, social hierarchy already emerging. They were, in many ways, the prototype for all later Mesopotamian civilizations. But unlike the Sumerians, the Ubaid people left behind no writing, no myths carved on tablets, no hymns to their gods, only artifacts, quiet, wordless clues to an entire worldview now erased. And among those artifacts, none are stranger than the small clay statues found buried beneath homes, temples, and refuse pits. Statues with long tapered snouts, slanted eyes, smooth reptilian heads, and human bodies. Some sit on thrones, some nurse infants, some wear belts, skirts, or patterned clothing. Some stand as if in ceremony. Some look almost regal. And no matter how many are found, their meaning refuses to reveal itself. The discovery, the first of the Ubaid figurines, appeared in 1919 during British excavations at Tal al-Ubaid, Eridu, and Ur. Archaeologists expected pottery and simple tools. What they found instead stopped them cold. Clay figures, some broken, some intact, depicting humanoid beings with lizard-like faces. Over the next decades, more emerged, figurines cradling reptilian infants, figurines with lizard heads and human arms, figurines with elongated skulls, figurines with wide almond-shaped eyes, figurines adorned with jewelry or ceremonial clothing. This was no artistic accident, no quirky pottery fad, no one-off religious symbol. There was deliberate design, repeated again and again across multiple sites. The reptilian features weren't random, they were central to the identity of these figurines. But why? The figurines, small in size, massive in questions, the statues range from a few centimeters to over 20 centimeters tall. They were molded from clay, fired in simple kilns, and finished with surprising detail. Scholars note several recurring features: elongated, pointed faces, large, unblinking eyes, smooth, scale-like surfaces, narrow shoulders, human torsos, clothing indicated with carved lines, jewelry, belts, skirts, straps, seated or standing postures. Some even appear in birthing or nursing poses, which complicates interpretations. If these were gods, why depict them in motherhood? If they were costumes, why sculpt reptilian infants too? One figurine shows a lizard-headed being sitting calmly while holding a baby, with the same reptilian features. Another stands upright, posture rigid, hands pressed against its chest as if in ritual. There's meaning here, purpose, identity, but no one can decipher it. What we know about the Ubaid people: the Ubaid weren't primitive. They were organized, skilled, and connected. By the time they produced the figurines, they used irrigation to farm barley, lived in multi-room homes, built some of the earliest temples in human history, traded with Arabia, Iran, and possibly beyond, crafted painted ceramics with precision, used tools of stone and early metal. Their culture lasted over 1,000 years longer than many empires. Yet nowhere else in Mesopotamia or in Egypt, India, or the Levant do we find figurines quite like these. They are uniquely Ubaid, a distinct symbol of something we can no longer name. Theories. What were they trying to show? Here are the main interpretations scholars debate today. 1. Ritual figures, or household deities. Some archaeologists believe they represent gods, ancestors, or protective spirits kept in homes. Reptiles, especially snakes, often symbolized renewal, fertility, or healing in later Mesopotamian myths. But the Ubaid figurines don't look like snakes or local fauna. They look intentional and stylized. Still, it's possible they were spiritual representations tied to early beliefs. To ceremonial masks, another theory holds that the figurines depict humans wearing masks during rituals. Perhaps the lizard-like features mimicked symbolic animals from Ubaid mythology. But again, the presence of reptilian infants confuses this explanation. Why would a child wear a mask? 3 mythical beings or culture heroes. Some propose these figurines depict characters from oral legends, ancestral beings, mythical founders, or symbolic guardians. Cultures all over the world have hybrid figures, half human, half animal beings that embody cosmic or spiritual forces. Perhaps the Ubaid had their own now lost to time. 4. An artistic style with lost context. It may simply have been an aesthetic that carried symbolic meaning everyone in the Ubaid culture understood. Something as intuitive to them as a cross, a crescent, or a lotus is today. But the truth is, we don't know. Their meaning died with the culture that made them. 5. The fringe theory, not supported by archaeology outside academic circles. The figurines have fueled speculation. Ancient aliens, a forgotten reptilian species, visitors from another world, genetic experiments in prehistory. These ideas make great stories, but lack evidence. Still, the figurines' appearance is so unusual that they continue to inspire the imagination. Why the figurines matter even without definitive answers. The Ubaid figurines tell us something profound. They show the birth of symbolic thinking, the earliest roots of religion, story, identity, and myth. They reveal experimentation. In art, early belief systems, a community searching for meaning, symbolic ideas that mattered enough to sculpt in clay. They also show that human imagination is far older and stranger than we usually believe. The Ubaid people lived thousands of years before written language, yet they crafted images that still puzzle us today. Images that feel intentional, significant, loaded with meaning. Images that sparked questions that remain unanswered nearly 7,000 years later. What were they trying to tell us? Standing before one of these figurines in a museum today, it's impossible not to feel a kind of quiet tension, a sense that you are staring into a world that once existed but has completely vanished. A culture with beliefs so old and so alien to us that the symbols they left behind feel like echoes from a dream we can't fully remember. Were these beings gods, spirits, stories, masks, ancestors, something else entirely? Or were they simply symbols meant for a community we no longer understand? Whatever the answer, the Ubaid figurines leave us with a question far larger than themselves. Why did one of the world's earliest cultures choose to sculpt themselves as something other? And what does that say about how they saw humanity, nature, or divinity? Because if tiny clay statues with reptilian faces raise questions about belief, identity, and imagination, then our next discovery raises questions about something even more extraordinary. How did ancient cultures move stones so massive, so heavy, and so precisely placed that even today we struggle to explain their construction? Our journey takes us from the small and symbolic to the colossal and impossible. Ancient dolmens, the stone gates of the forgotten dead, from the mysterious reptilian figurines of ancient Mesopotamia. We step once more into the open air, into a world shaped by stone, silence, and the memory of forgotten people. The next mystery is not hidden beneath earth, nor buried beneath waves. It stands boldly on hilltops, in forests, in deserts, on windswept plains, in valleys carved by glaciers, and in places where the sky seems to press down at the edge of the world. These monuments are older than most civilizations, older than writing, older than the earliest pyramids, and unlike temples or palaces, they have no walls, no roofs, no inscriptions. Just stone. Stone arranged with such careful balance, intention, and engineering skill that it has survived thousands of years of weather, war, erosion, and time. We call them dolmens. They go by many names: cromlechs, portal tombs, table stones, stony houses, but the structure is always the same. A handful of upright stones forming a chamber, topped by a massive flat capstone. Sometimes the capstone is the size of a boulder. Sometimes it is the size of a small house. And always it is impossibly heavy. What makes this mystery so compelling is not just their age or their global spread. It's the fact that these dolmens appear everywhere across continents and oceans, in societies with no known connection to one another, yet built with uncanny similarity. Ireland, France, Spain, Portugal, Jordan, Israel, Syria, Russia, India, Korea, they all have them. Thousands of them. But how, why, and what do they mean? To answer those questions, if an answer even exists, we have to step back in time, farther than most history books ever go. A monument type shared across the ancient world. Imagine standing on a hill in Ireland. The wind is cold, the grass sways in silver waves, and before you stands a structure older than Stonehenge. 3 great stones forming to supports and a roof, angled like a giant stone doorway into another world. Now imagine standing on a hillside in Korea. The air is different, humid, warmer, and the land looks nothing like Ireland. Yet the structure before you is nearly identical. Upright stones with a massive slab resting above. Same idea, same general shape, same engineering challenges. But these cultures had no contact, no shared religion, no common language, no common ancestry, at least not in any way archaeology has ever successfully traced. And yet, they built the same thing. When you see a dolmen in Ireland and one in Korea, thousands of miles apart, you cannot help but feel the tug of an ancient pattern, something humanity understood long before history began, something instinctive and universal. A structure for the dead, a gateway for the soul, a marker of sacred territory, or something else entirely? Whatever they were, these monuments have endured longer than empires. The scale, stones that should not stand the engineering question, is the first great puzzle. Take the Brownshill Dolmen in County Carlow, Ireland. Its capstone weighs an estimated 100 to 150 tons more than the largest stones used at Stonehenge. How did Neolithic farmers, without metal tools, without wheels, and without draft animals, move such a massive stone? We can guess: wooden rollers, lever systems, earthen ramps, sledges greased with animal fat. But these explanations falter when you imagine the actual work. 100 tons. Before bronze, before iron, before pulleys, cranes, rope blocks, or anything remotely mechanical. Just human bodies, human will, human belief. This is what makes dolmens so astonishing. They required organization and dedication on a level that suggests ritual importance, social hierarchy, and shared belief. People do not move a 100-ton boulder unless it means something powerful. The same pattern repeats across the Gangwood dolmens of Korea, the Palnabron dolmen in Ireland, the dolmens of the Golan Heights, the megaliths of Brittany, the dolmen fields of the Caucasus, the dolmen clusters in India's southern highlands. It is as if ancient communities across the world, without knowing each other, decided that one of the most meaningful things they could build was a stone chamber big enough to crawl into, yet strong enough to last forever. But what was the purpose? Tombs. And yet not always tombs. The standard explanation is that dolmens were burial chambers. And in many sites, archaeologists indeed found human remains, bones, pottery shards, stone tools, beads, and ornaments, suggesting funerary practices. But the burial interpretation doesn't explain. Dolmens with no remains, dolmens too small to enter, dolmens with no signs of ceiling, dolmens positioned with astronomical alignment, dolmens placed in clusters of hundreds, dolmens used across thousands of years by different cultures, dolmens built on mountain ridges where it would be nearly impossible to transport bodies regularly. Some were burial sites, that is clear, but not all. Some appear symbolic, some ceremonial, some territorial, some aligned with sunrise, sunset, or solstice, some oriented toward distant mountains or water sources. Dolmens cannot be placed into a single category. They were many things, just like temples, churches, pyramids, and shrines evolved over time. And that diversity tells us something important. Dolmens were not built for convenience. They were built for meaning. Engineering. How were they raised? Here's where the mystery grows even deeper. The upright legs of a dolmen must be precisely leveled. The capstone cannot tilt, or it will slide off. The weight distribution has to be perfect. This means advanced understanding of balance, knowledge of stone behavior, teamwork, and coordinated labor planning, design, geometry. Even if not written, all from societies that supposedly hadn't invented the wheel yet. Experimental archaeologists have tried to replicate dolmen construction. Most tests require dozens of people, sometimes over 100, to move a stone weighing even 20 tons. But many capstones exceed 50 to 100 tons. This means quarrying stone, shaping stone, transporting stone, raising stone, stabilizing stone, and then doing it all repeatedly for thousands of dolmens. This was not a casual project. It was a large-scale, long-term cultural commitment. Something guided these ancient builders. A story, a belief, a worldview, a tradition, a meaning now largely lost. Global spread, coincidence, or cultural memory. How did so many distant regions create such similar structures? Some suggest convergent evolution, the idea that humans in different places arrived at the same architectural solution independently. Others believe old migration patterns carry the answer. Perhaps early humans moving north out of Africa brought with them a tradition of stone ancestor markers or shelters for ritual. A controversial idea, but not impossible. Another theory: dolmens represent a shared memory, a prehistoric symbolic language carried and reshaped across thousands of miles during humanity's earliest expansions. Yet there is no direct evidence linking Korean dolmens to Irish ones, or Caucasus dolmens to Middle Eastern ones. No pottery styles match, no carvings match, no tools match. Only the architecture does. A universal idea expressed through stone. But what idea? The spiritual interpretations. Archaeology offers theories, but spirituality offers more imaginative ones. Dolmens as portals, gateways for the dead to pass into another world. Dolmens as sky markers aligned with stars, seasons, and celestial events. Dolmens as ancestral houses, places where the living could commune with the spirits. Dolmens as territorial flags, massive stone signatures marking clan identity. Dolmens as cosmic symbols representing earth, sky, life, death, and time. Because dolmens can be entered or at least approached, they create a sense of threshold, a liminal space between worlds. Some are built on ridges where the sunrise on solstice lines up directly with the entrance. Some point toward distant mountains believed to be sacred. Some are arranged in long lines, forming ancient paths across the land. They are more than tombs. They are messages. Messages in stone, written with a grammar we no longer understand. The dolmens of Korea. The greatest concentration on Earth. Korea has the most dolmens of any region. Over 40,000 documented so far. Why Korea? Why so many? Why so dense? Some dolmens there are gigantic, their capstones weighing up to 300 tons, rivaling those of the largest megalithic sites on Earth. Many lie in straight lines or clusters. Some align with water sources. Some sit atop mountains. Some stand in valleys. Some appear arranged by social status, the larger ones possibly marking leaders, the smaller ones common people. But still, the question lingers: what belief made ancient Koreans willing to move stones heavier than modern tanks thousands of times over? This wasn't just burial. It was identity. Europe's dolmens, markers of communities long gone across Western Europe. Dolmens dot the land like ancient signatures in stone. In places like Brittany, France, and Ireland, they form clusters connected to myths of giants, ancestors, spirit guardians, fairy realms, underworld gateways. Even after thousands of years, people continue to weave stories around them, stories of giants lifting the stones, stories of heroes buried beneath, stories of doorways that open only on certain nights of the year. When stories outlast civilizations, it means the monuments mattered profoundly. The dolmens of the Middle East, a forgotten megalithic landscape in Jordan, Israel, and Syria, lie dolmen fields stretching across the landscape. Many are untouched, many buried, many eroded beyond recognition. and some have carvings, simple lines, geometric patterns, symbols whose meaning is lost. These carvings suggest a ritual purpose, but no one knows what the rituals were. Were they ancient shrines? Were they burial markers? Were they family vaults? Were they places of initiation? What's clear is this: dolmens represent some of humanity's earliest attempts to shape the sacred. What we don't know, despite thousands of dolmens, we still cannot answer. Who exactly built them? Why similar structures appear globally? What precise rituals they served? How some of the heaviest stones were moved? Whether they were tombs, temples, symbols, or something else entirely? Why they persist for millennia while the cultures behind them vanish? Dolmens are the whispers of a world long gone, a world where people interacted with death, land, and sky in ways we barely grasp today. They remind us that prehistoric humans were not primitive. They were engineers, artists, believers, thinkers, organizers, builders, dreamers, and above all, mystics of stone. If dolmens reveal how ancient societies shaped stone to honor the dead, then our next journey reveals how entire cultures built cities, temples, roads, and kingdoms only for them to collapse suddenly into dust, leaving behind ruins so strange and so advanced that modern archaeologists still argue over how they functioned. The next mystery is not a structure or an artifact. It is an entire lost civilization. From the weathered dolmens scattered across hills and plains, our journey now turns south deep into the heart of Africa. Here, far from deserts or coastlines, surrounded by rolling green hills and ancient granite outcrops, lies a ruin unlike anything else on the continent. A ruin built not of mud or wood or reed, but of stone. Stone placed without mortar, stone arranged with precision, stone raised into walls so vast and so smooth they ripple across the landscape, like the hide of some great sleeping creature. This is Great Zimbabwe, a place so impressive, so unexpected, that when Europeans first saw it, they refused to believe the truth. They invented myths. They credited Phoenicians, Arabs, Israelites, even wandering lost tribes, anyone except the people who actually built it. But archaeology would reveal something far more powerful and far more meaningful. Great Zimbabwe was built by Africans, by ancestors of the Shona, by a people whose engineering skill, organization, and economic reach stretched across an empire. And yet this civilization, mighty enough to leave behind stone cities, trade networks, and royal enclosures, vanished. Its capital abandoned, its walls left silent, its power dissolved into history with barely a whisper. So what happened here? How was this city built? Why did it rise and why did it fall? To answer these questions, we must walk through its surviving stone walls and uncover the story etched into every block. The Stone Kingdom in the hills. Great Zimbabwe stands in southeastern Zimbabwe, amid a landscape of granite copious towering natural formations where stone peels away in sheets. As it weathers, these slabs, falling cleanly from the outcrops, provided the perfect building material, and the builders used them well. The ruins stretch over 720 hectares, one of the largest ancient stone settlements in Africa. They are divided into three major areas: the hill complex, perched atop a massive granite outcrop; the valley ruins, once filled with homes, workshops, and trade centers; and the greatest of them all, the Great Enclosure, the largest ancient stone structure south of the Sahara. It is this great enclosure that captures the imagination. A wall soaring as high as 36 feet, curving in smooth lines round an oval courtyard. A wall so thick, sometimes over 16 feet, that it dwarfs the people who walk beside it. The stones are unmortared. Each block was shaped, sized, and fitted by hand, placed in long horizontal courses, leaning inward slightly for strength, a technique passed down over generations of expert masons. Walking beside these walls, you feel dwarfed not only by their height, but by the precision and patience behind every stone. The conical tower, a symbol of power or mystery. Inside the great enclosure stands the conical tower, a massive solid stone structure, rising like a granary or an unfinished obelisk. There is no doorway, no chambers, just a tapering cylinder of stone. What was it? A granary symbol, representing abundance and the king's ability to provide. A ritual monument, a political emblem, a marker of royal authority? Archaeologists still debate, but whatever its purpose, It was meant to impress, and it does. Standing beside the tower, one thing becomes clear. Great Zimbabwe's builders understood symbolism. They understood power, and they understood the language of stone. A city connected to the world for centuries, historians underestimated Great Zimbabwe. They assumed it was isolated, provincial, local. But then excavations began and evidence emerged that shattered those assumptions. Archaeologists uncovered Chinese porcelain, Persian glass, Arabian coins, Indian beads. Swahili coast imports. This was not a remote settlement. This was an economic powerhouse with trade routes stretching across the African continent and outward to the Indian Ocean world. Gold from nearby mines moved through Great Zimbabwe. Ivory, cattle, and iron goods passed through traders' hands. Caravans traveled from these stone walls to coastal ports like Sofala, where merchants from Arabia, India, and even China exchanged goods. At its peak, Great Zimbabwe controlled a region large enough to support tens of thousands of people. It was a kingdom, a capital, a center of commerce, culture, and power. And the architecture reflected this status. Engineering without blueprints. How did the builders achieve such precise stonework without mortar? The answer lies in craft tradition. Shona masons selected stones from collapsed granite sheets. They trimmed each block with hammerstones. They stacked them with subtle inward angles. They shaped walls to curve smoothly round the landscape. They decorated certain sections with chevron patterns, herringbone motifs, and raised friezes, symbolic geometries that may have carried meaning now lost. Not all the walls were perfect. Some collapsed over the centuries. Some remained jagged. Some were rebuilt by later groups. But the overall engineering mastery remains breathtaking. Even today, with lasers and machine tools, reconstructing the great enclosure exactly as it was would be a challenge. The social world behind the stone who lived here. The archaeological record reveals elaborate homes built of Dhaka mud plaster, workshops for iron smelting, areas for gold working, with slag, crucibles, and molds, spaces for cattle keeping, a major source of wealth, public areas for trade and ceremony. The ruling elite likely lived within the hill complex, protected by steep terrain and controlling access from below. The great enclosure may have been a royal residence, an initiation center, or a ceremonial space. And the city surrounding these structures supported a vibrant population: farmers, herders, artisans, traders, and religious figures. Great Zimbabwe was not an isolated wonder. It was a living, breathing city. The decline, a kingdom that faded into dust by the 15th century, Great Zimbabwe began to empty. Not violently, not with fire or war, but gradually, quietly. The reasons remain debated, but theories include environmental pressure from overgrazing, deforestation and erosion, exhaustion of local resources, especially grazing land for cattle, shifts in trade routes favoring rival states, political fragmentation, with power shifting north to the emerging Mutapa Empire, water scarcity from climate fluctuations, no catastrophe, no sudden collapse, just the slow unraveling of a once thriving capital. When the people left, the stone walls remained, silent, massive, mysterious, a monument without a voice. For centuries, vines crept over the stones, wind sanded the edges, animals moved into the abandoned courtyards. But the memory of Great Zimbabwe never vanished among the Shona. It lived on in stories, in lineage, in identity. And today, it stands again, no longer ignored, no longer denied as one of Africa's greatest architectural triumphs. The true mystery of Great Zimbabwe, the mystery is not who built it. We know that now. The mystery is how a kingdom this advanced, this organized, and this connected could rise so high and then disappear so completely that later cultures doubted it ever existed. The mystery is what lies beneath the ruins still unexcavated. Only a fraction of Great Zimbabwe has been explored. Many artifacts remain buried. Many structures remain unknown. And deeper than that, the mystery is why humans once built with stone on such a monumental scale, only to abandon the practice entirely afterward. Great Zimbabwe stands alone in Africa. Nothing before it, nothing after it. A singular flowering of architectural genius. Then silence. Great Zimbabwe shows us what happens when stone becomes the foundation of an empire. But our next mystery reveals what happens when stone becomes the canvas of ritual, the theater of death, and the stage upon which ancient people shape their beliefs about life, spirits, and the beyond. A discovery older than kings, older than cities, older than metal. A discovery carved far beneath the earth. A structure so vast and so intricate that many archaeologists still struggle to explain how it was built at all. There are archaeological discoveries that surprise you. There are discoveries that amaze you. And then, there are discoveries that unsettle you. Objects that don't fit. Artifacts so strange, so unexpected, so out of place that simply seeing them forces you to ask, what exactly were these people trying to show us? This is the story of one such discovery. A discovery not hidden beneath a mountain, not carved into stone, but shaped from clay by hands that lived 7,000 years ago. Long before the pyramids, long before summer, long before writing. Small clay figurines with human bodies and reptilian faces. Figurines that stare back at you with wide, unblinking almond-shaped eyes. Figurines with long tapered muzzles, rigid skulls, and smooth skin that looks almost deliberately non-human. Some hold infants with the same reptilian traits. Some wear belts, skirts, jewelry. Some appear male, some appear female, some appear neither. These are the Ubaid lizard figurines, and to this day, no one knows exactly who or what they were meant to represent. To understand their mystery, we must go back to one of the earliest cradles of civilization, the world of the Ubaid people before summer. Before the rise of kings and empires, there was the Ubaid culture, a society that flourished across southern Mesopotamia. From roughly 5000 to 4000 BC, this was a time when irrigation first shaped settlements along the marshlands, agriculture, and cattle herding grew into organized systems. The earliest temples, proto-ziggurats, were built. Pottery took on elaborate geometric patterns. Trade routes stretched down into the Arabian Peninsula. These people laid the groundwork for everything that came later in Mesopotamia. But unlike the later Sumerians, the Ubaid people left no written records, no texts, no myths, no stories, only artifacts. And among those artifacts, none stand out like the lizard figurines. The discovery, an unearthly form emerges from the soil. The first figurines were discovered in 1919 at Tel al-Ubaid, near the ancient city of Ur, as excavations continued not only at Ubaid, but at Eridu, Ur, and other sites. More figurines emerged, dozens of them, all sharing the same unsettling characteristics: elongated skulls, slanted eyes, long, pointed faces, smooth cheeks, without noses, long necks, human bodies with detailed clothing, and in many cases small infants held in their arms. The consistency was striking. These were not crude or experimental works. They were deliberate, intentional, symbolic, and whatever they represented, the Ubaid people cared enough to reproduce the same form again and again. A closer look. What do the figurines actually portray? The figurines vary in height from a few inches to nearly 8 or 9 inches, but the themes are the same. Let's break them down. 1. Reptilian heads. The face is unmistakably non-human. No round nose, no human cheeks, narrow jawline, wide-set eyes, sharp, tapered muzzle. Some skulls have ridges, almost like a crest. Others are smooth and elongated. These features weren't random. They were repeated deliberately across decades of creation. 2 human bodies despite their reptilian heads. The bodies are unmistakably human. Human shoulders, torsos, arms, and legs. Clothing marked by etched lines, belts, skirts, collars, bracelets in some cases. Carefully shaped breasts. These weren't animals. They weren't monsters. They weren't accidental distortions. They were hybrids. 3. The mother and child motif. One of the most unsettling details is the maternal imagery. Some figurines show a reptilian-headed female figure holding a reptilian-headed infant, cradled in the same nurturing pose seen later in Mesopotamian art. This motif is culturally significant. You don't represent mother and child figures unless the image is deeply meaningful, often religious, which suggests these figures weren't random creations. They embodied beliefs that predate writing, beliefs that left no explanation except the figurines themselves. What did the figurines mean? Archaeologists have proposed several theories. Each explains part of the mystery, but none solves it completely. Theory 1. Religious deities or mythological beings. The Ubaid people were among the first temple builders, and many figurines were found near temple foundations. Could the reptilian figures represent gods, spirits, or supernatural beings from early Mesopotamian mythology? Mesopotamian myths written thousands of years later include references to serpent gods, underworld creatures, hybrid beings, half-human, half-animal figures. It is possible these figurines were early versions of gods later forgotten or transformed. But if so, why reptiles? Why consistent reptilian features? Why the mother and child motif? The Ubaid beliefs remain silent. Theory 2. Ritual masks and ceremonial roles. Another academic theory suggests the figures might represent humans wearing ceremonial masks. Masks shaped like lizards, snakes, turtles, or ancestral spirits if the masks were symbolic, perhaps representing transformation, fertility, or connection with nature. Then the figurines may depict ritual participants rather than literal beings. This is plausible, but many figurines lack any suggestion of a mask strap or seam that distinguishes masks in later art. They appear fully reptilian. Theory 3. Shamanistic transformation symbols. Some scholars believe the figurines reflect shamanistic practices. In many ancient cultures, shamans were depicted in partial animal forms to symbolize transformation, journeying between worlds, union with nature, spirit, animal guardians. Reptiles, especially snakes, are often linked to fertility, rebirth, and the underworld. In this interpretation, the figurines could represent shamans in trance, mythic ancestors, guardians of sacred knowledge. This theory accounts for symbolism, but not the stunning consistency of the reptilian features across sites. Theory 4. An unknown cultural style no longer understood. Some archaeologists simply propose that the Ubaid figurines belong to a symbolic language, fully understood by the people of the time, but completely lost to us today. If true, then the reptilian heads were metaphors. The hybrid forms conveyed ideas, and the meaning might never be recovered. This is the most academically cautious interpretation, but also the least satisfying. Theory 5. The fringe theory, the ancient alien interpretation outside mainstream academia. The Ubaid figurines sparked more dramatic interpretations. Alien theorists argue that the figurines depict actual beings encountered by the Ubaid. The reptile-like faces were not symbolic, they were literal. The mother and child figurines show hybrid species, and that the Ubaid culture may have interacted with non-human intelligences. This theory has no archaeological evidence, but the figurines' appearance keeps the speculation alive online, in documentaries, and in popular imaginations. Whether symbolic or literal, the figurines are undeniably unique. No other known ancient culture in Mesopotamia created anything quite like them, and that fact alone makes them extraordinary. Why are the figurines so consistent across sites? This is perhaps the deepest mystery. Across multiple Ubaid settlements separated by distance and time, the same general design appears. Same reptilian head shape, same eyes, same posture, same clothing style. This consistency suggests a widespread belief system, a shared religious symbol,
or a common ritual tradition. Cultures rarely maintain consistency in mythic representations unless they serve an important purpose, which means the Ubaid figurines were not toys, not random creations, not artistic experiments. They were cultural icons. Icons whose meaning we have lost. The broader impact. Why the figurines still matter. The Ubaid lizard figurines force us to reconsider several assumptions. 1. Humanity's earliest beliefs may be stranger than we imagine. Kedua, symbolism existed long before writing and may have been complex. 3. The path from the Ubaid to Sumer may not have been linear. 4. We may have lost entire mythologies before history began. 5. Ancient people expressed identity, fear, hope, and imagination through symbols we no longer understand. The figurines remind us that the past is not a straight line leading to us. It is a tapestry woven from cultures, symbols, and stories long forgotten. And sometimes those symbols take forms we never expected. What if we're missing something? What if the figurines aren't simply myth or art? What if they hint at something larger? The first temples in Mesopotamia appeared during the Ubaid period, the first organized priesthoods, the first city layouts, the first long-distance trade networks, the first elaborate symbolic art. Could the Ubari people have preserved stories, myths, or cosmologies older than civilization itself? Could these reptilian figures represent gods or ancestors passed down from a far earlier age, pre-agricultural myths nearly erased by time? Until new evidence emerges, a buried temple, a symbolic inscription, or a cache of new figurines, we may never know. But the mystery remains. The Ubaid lizard figurines show us that sometimes the smallest artifacts raise the biggest questions. But our next discovery dwarfs them not in mystery, but in sheer size. Massive stones, balanced in impossible formations, spread across continents, built by cultures who had no contact with each other, yet all constructed the same unmistakable design. There are ancient sites that whisper, there are ancient sites that puzzle. And then, there are ancient sites that stand like sentinels, scattered across continents, silent and immovable, refusing to explain themselves. Dolmens, massive stone structures built with slabs so heavy, so cumbersome, so improbably precise, that simply looking at one forces a question into your mind. How, why, and by whom? Because dolmens are not the work of one culture, not a symbol of one people, not the invention of one civilization. They appear everywhere. Ireland, France, Spain, Wales, Denmark, Israel, Jordan, Russia, India, Korea, Weta, Korea. Thousands upon thousands of these stone monuments spread across the world like a forgotten map. A map left by people who lived long before writing, long before kings, long before recorded history. They are so old, so deeply buried in prehistory, that they challenge our understanding of human development itself. And yet, despite their age, they persist, stone against time, memory against oblivion. This is the story of the dolmens, the global puzzle that archaeology has yet to solve. The first site, a monument that shouldn't exist. Imagine walking through a windswept field in Ireland. The grass is long, the sky is low, the wind shivers the earth in waves. And then suddenly, there it is, 3 enormous standing stones, each the size of a small car, holding up a massive capstone that weighs more than a fully loaded semi-truck. The dolmen leans forward like a doorway to another world. The capstone balances so perfectly that it seems sculpted, not lifted. Yet it was lifted. But how? Who taught Neolithic people to move stones that weigh 50, 80, even 100 tons? How did they shape them, raise them, place them, and more importantly, why did cultures separated by oceans and thousands of kilometers build the same structure in the same shape with the same stones for more than 3,000 years? This is what confounds archaeologists to this day. Dolmens are too widespread to be coincidence, too similar to be random, too difficult to be casual. They are intentional, purposeful, unified. But unified by what? A forgotten ritual, a shared ancient belief, a lost global tradition, or something older than any civilization on record, building the impossible. Engineering without tools. When modern engineers look at dolmens, one question inevitably arises. How did Neolithic people move stones heavier than many stones used in the Egyptian pyramids? Because dolmen builders had no metal tools, no wheels in many regions, no cranes, no pack animals, no formal mathematics, no pulley systems, and yet, they quarried massive slabs, transported them across rough terrain, raised them upright, balanced capstones carefully enough to last 5,000 years, and oriented some dolmens towards celestial events. To move a 100-ton capstone today, you'd need a fleet of trucks, a crane the size of a building, a team of specialized engineers, a reinforced route. So how did prehistoric people do it? Archaeologists suggest wooden rollers, earthen ramps, logs as levers, ropes made of braided plant fibers, large coordinated labor groups. But even these explanations struggle when stones exceed 80 or 100 tons. Some dolmen capstones weigh more than all the stones of Stonehenge combined. The simplest truth may be the hardest to accept. The builders understood something about stone movement and leverage that modern archaeologists still don't. A knowledge now lost. A technique forgotten, a craft passed down orally, then buried by time. But whatever method they used it everywhere, from Ireland to Korea. Meaning the knowledge either spread across vast distances, or emerged independently in a pattern too precise to be chance. Inside the dolmen, a structure with purpose, Dolmens usually consist of two or more upright stones, a massive flat capstone, a chamber beneath originally. Many were covered in earthen mounds, creating burial chambers. Over thousands of years, the soil eroded, leaving the stone skeleton behind. Inside these chambers, archaeologists have found human bones, pottery beads, tools, ornaments, offerings. This strongly suggests dolmens may have been tombs, not of common people, but of elites, leaders, spiritual figures, or ancestors. But here is the strange part. Many dolmens show no remains at all. Others show remains from multiple time periods, as if the chamber was reopened repeatedly, perhaps for ceremonial rites, ancestral worship, or seasonal rituals. And some contain offerings, with no trace of human burials. This inconsistency makes it difficult to claim dolmens were purely tombs. They may have served ritual purposes, astronomical functions, territorial markers, ancestor gateways, spiritual thresholds. Some point precisely to sunrise on the solstice. Others align with constellations. Some mark the line intersections, and some have no clear celestial relationship at all, which implies one thing: dolmens were not a single function monument. They were something more. A symbolic technology, a spiritual architecture, a ritual gateway between worlds. Global distribution, a mystery that defies explanation. The most baffling aspect of dolmens is not their size or construction, it is their distribution. They appear in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, the Caucasus Mountains, the Middle East, Siberia, the Indian subcontinent, Japan, China, Korea. How can such similar structures appear in so many places built by cultures with no contact with each other? 3 explanations exist, each with huge implications. Theory 1: Convergent evolution of architecture. Some archaeologists argue dolmens were simply a practical way to build burial chambers with available stones. Different cultures independently discovered the same solution. But this explanation ignores the identical shapes, the similar burial patterns, the repeated astronomical alignments, the nearly universal symbolic style coincidence. Docenti explained consistency. Theory 2: a shared ancient cultural ancestry. Another theory suggests dolmen building cultures may have descended from a far older common group, perhaps migrating out of the Near East or Eastern Europe. But no such mother culture has been found, and the distances involved make it improbable that one tradition spread so perfectly across so many regions. Theory 3: a lost prehistoric network. The most intriguing theory, though still speculative, is that prehistoric societies were far more connected than we assume. Not connected by empires or writing, but by symbolic traditions, spiritual practices, and ancestral memories. A world where ideas traveled through interlinked tribes long before history began. The dolmens then become evidence of a prehistoric world we barely understand. A world where megalithic builders shared a narrative, a ritual tradition spread across continents. Stone monuments served as markers of identity. The dead were honored in similar ways everywhere. Could ancient humanity have been more culturally unified than we think? The dolmens may be the only surviving proof. Case studies. Dolmens that defy logic. 1. Paunabron Dolmen, Ireland. Capstone weight 70 tons. Age 5,800 years. Carved and raised without wheels. Made of limestone slabs, shaped with incredible precision. Inside, remains of dozens of individuals, including infants. A site of ritual, not simply burial. To Brownsell Dolmen, Ireland. Capstone weight 100 plus tons. The largest capstone in Europe. Impossible to lift without modern machinery, yet lifted by Neolithic people. No one knows how. 3. Gangwa Dolmens, Korea. Thousands of dolmens in one region, some with capstones over 7 meters long. Korea holds the largest concentration of dolmens on Earth. Why here? Who built them? Why so many? No answers. 4. Jordan Valley Dolmens, Middle East dolmens, scattered across hills and valleys, often containing no human remains. Some engraved with mysterious symbols, and incredibly, some are aligned to sunrise on specific days of the year. Astronomical knowledge in a prehistoric culture. What do dolmens tell us about ancient humanity? Dolmens weren't random stone piles. They reveal that prehistoric people understood engineering far earlier than assumed. They organized massive labor groups before cities existed. They shared symbolic rituals across enormous distances. They built monuments meant to last thousands of years. The dolmens suggest a humanity that remembered its dead, marked its lands, looked to the stars, valued permanence, understood stone deeply, maintained traditions across generations, and yet, when writing appeared, when cities rose, when kingdoms formed, the knowledge vanished, domain building simply stopped. Why? Did religions change? Did populations migrate? Did new beliefs replace old ones? No one knows. The sudden disappearance of the tradition is almost as mysterious as the dolmens themselves. The dolmens and the human imagination. Dolmens have inspired myths for centuries. In Europe, they recalled giant tables, fairy altars, which as houses druid gates. In Korea, they relinked to ancestral spirits. In India, they retied to ancient kings. In the Caucasus, they are connected to giants or forgotten gods. Almost universally, local legends say the same thing. These stones were not placed by ordinary humans. Maybe not giants. Maybe not gods. But certainly humans with knowledge we no longer possess. Dolmens stand at the intersection of engineering and myth. Practical in structure, symbolic in purpose, mysterious in origin. They remind us that prehistory is not empty. It is simply unrecorded, and the world before writing was far more complex than we imagine. The dolmens show us what ancient people could build, but our next discovery shows us what ancient people could imagine. Strange beings, hybrid forms, carved from clay and stone, carrying meanings now lost, depicting things that do not appear human at all. There are mysteries built from stone. There are mysteries built from cities. And then, there are mysteries built from faces. Faces that do not resemble us. Faces that seem to come from a dream, or a nightmare, older than history itself. Small figurines made by hand, shaped out of clay, painted, carved, fired, given form by people who lived long before writing, long before recorded myth, long before religion took recognizable shape. Yet somehow, they look like something we should recognize. Something we should remember, with elongated heads. Large almond-shaped eyes, smooth, almost scaled skin. Slender bodies with human posture, but non-human features. These are the Ubad lizard figurines, among the oldest and most unsettling artifacts ever discovered in Mesopotamia, the very cradle of civilization. If the dolmens of the world whisper about forgotten engineering, the Ubaid figurines whisper about forgotten identity. They raise a question no other artifact dares to ask so boldly. What did ancient humans think they were seeing? Or scarier, what were they remembering? A discovery beneath dust and time. Our story begins in southern Iraq, near the ancient sites of Tel al-Ubaid, and Eridu settlements that existed more than 7,000 years ago, long before the rise of the Sumerian world. Archaeologists, digging through layers of mud brick ruins, found painted pottery, clay vessels, agricultural tools, temple foundations, small household objects, all expected, all familiar, but then, deeper down, in layers, untouched for thousands of years, they found something unexpected, a strange figurine with a human body, but a reptilian head. At first, it was dismissed as an unusual artistic style. Then another was found, and another. And then dozens more, each sharing the same uncanny characteristics. Each too deliberate to be an accident, too consistent to be random, too strange to be ignored. Holding infants, wearing belts, wearing skirts, standing upright, sitting in ritual postures, but with faces that look more like lizards, or something lizard-like. Their eyes were especially unnerving, wide, oval, and unblinking, carved in a way that gives them a permanent expression of watchfulness. Who or what were these meant to represent? The Ubaid civilization. A dawn before dawn. To understand the figurines, you must understand the people who made them. The Ubadi culture 5000 to 4000 BC predates the Sumerians writing organized city-states. Kings recorded myth. They lived in small but advanced settlements. They farmed using irrigation canals. They built the earliest known tripartite temples. They traded with distant regions across the Persian Gulf. They were not primitive, not isolated, not wandering nomads. They were among the first people to settle, build, harvest, worship, and create a stable society. But they left no writing, no mythology recorded in clay, no inscriptions to explain their rituals. Everything we know about them is pieced together from pottery, bones, and artifacts like the figurines. The Ubad period is, in a sense, proto-history, the era right before humans learned to document their thoughts, which makes the figurines even more significant. They represent beliefs that existed before writing, beliefs passed down orally, whispered between generations, shaping rituals and identities in ways we can no longer reconstruct. These figurines may be the only surviving pieces of an entire worldview, underscore the figurines themselves. Too human to dismiss, too strange to explain. Let's look closely at the figurines. They share several defining features. 1. Elongated, reptilian heads, not round, not stylized, distinctively reptile-like. Long skulls, tapering into narrow snouts. This was not symbolic exaggeration. It was intentional. 2. Large, almond-shaped eyes carved deeply, tilted upwards. Unblinking eyes that seemed designed to appear alert, not relaxed. 3. Smooth skin with minimal detailing, unlike later Sumerian figurines, which include hair, beards, and facial details. Ubaid figurines show smooth, scale-like surfaces, reminiscent of reptiles. 4. Clothing and accessories. This is important. These were not depictions of animals. They were lizard-headed people, skirts, belts, jewelry, ceremonial sashes, all sculpted with deliberate detail. 5. Maternal scenes. Some figurines hold infants, yet the infants also have reptilian heads. This detail is perhaps the most disturbing, because it suggests either the figurines depict a myth, or the figurines depict a species, not a symbolic costume. 6. Ritual postures. Many sit or stand in recognizable ceremonial poses. This indicates religious or social significance, not toys, not random art. 7. Deliberate consistency across different excavation sites, across different regions, across various layers of time. The figurines maintain the same features. This means the image, whatever it represented, was important, stable, and widely recognized among Ubaid people. But what exactly did it represent? Theories. The many faces behind the figurines have inspired countless theories, each attempting to explain something that doesn't fit neatly into archaeological categories. Let's examine the most accepted interpretations. Theory 1. Religious deities. Many archaeologists believe the figurines depict gods or spirits. Reptiles appear in later Mesopotamian myths. Serpents, dragon-like beings, and chthonic entities representing fertility, creation, rebirth, underworld power. Perhaps the Ubaid imagined their deities as reptilian beings. But why reptilian? Why universally reptilian? Why with infants? The lack of written mythology makes this theory compelling, but incomplete. Theory 2. Shamans in masks. Another theory argues the figurines show shamans wearing ritual masks during ceremonies. The elongated faces could be stylized representations of ceremonial attire. But this still raises questions. Why would shamans be uniformly depicted with lizard masks? Why infants with similar heads? Why no figurines of mask-wearing humans without the reptilian features? If these are masks, the masks themselves demand explanation. Theory 3. Mythological hybrids. Some cultures depict human-animal hybrids. Egypt, India, Greece. Perhaps the Ubaid had their own mythic beings, part human, part reptile. But again, why reptiles? And why so consistently? Theory 4. Symbolic fertility figures. Some figurines show exaggerated breasts or pregnant bellies. Perhaps the reptilian heads represent a symbolic aspect of birth, life, transformation. Reptiles shed skin. Rebirth symbolism exists in many cultures, but this feels like a stretch to explain the more elaborate figurines. Theory 5. Lost cultural identity. A more grounded theory. The figurines depict a clan, tribe, or elite group who used body paint, masks, or ritual modifications to create a reptilian appearance. Perhaps this was an identity marker, a group who considered themselves children of the serpent, similar to how some cultures identify with totemic animals. But again, the infant figurines challenge this. Theory 6. The controversial extraterrestrial hypothesis, not academically accepted, but popular. The figurines resemble modern depictions of reptilian or alien beings. Large eyes, slender bodies, non-human faces. Some propose the figurines represent visitors or beings mythologized over generations. Mainstream archaeology rejects this. But the question remains, Why would a prehistoric culture consistently depict non-human creatures in positions of status, ritual, and motherhood? Where did that idea come from? What memory or myth inspired such imagery? What the figurines reveal about the Ubaid mind, whether mythological or literal? Costume or deity, symbolic or ancestral, the figurines reveal something profound. The Ubaid civilization envisioned beings who were not entirely human. They conceptualized hybrid forms. They created rituals around them. They placed them in households and temples. They buried them. They passed these images across generations. These weren't random creations. They were part of a structure of belief. One of the earliest we know. Before writing, before kings, before recorded myth, meaning the Ubaid figurines preserve a memory older than history, a memory we cannot fully decode. They show the sophistication of early Mesopotamian spirituality. They show the complexity of pre-Sumerian cosmology. They show the courage of ancient artists to depict what they believed in, even if it was strange or otherworldly. And most importantly, they show us that the human imagination has always reached beyond the human. Are the figurines a message from the past? When you stand in a museum exhibit and stare into the oval eyes of an Ubaid figurine, you feel something uncanny, something ancient, something familiar in the unfamiliar. It is as if you are looking not at art, but at a memory of something people once believed, walked among them, lived with them, guided them, haunted them, protected them, terrified them, or maybe simply represented them in ways we can no longer rationalize. These figurines are not answers. They are questions in clay, questions older than history itself. The Ubaid figurines show us the earliest shadows of belief. But our next discovery takes us to something far larger and far stranger. Massive stone structures that appear not across continents, but beneath them. Structures that predate cities. Structures buried intentionally. Structures built with engineering more advanced than anything expected from their era. There are places in the world where history feels old. And then, there are places where history feels impossible. It is one thing to walk through a ruined city from 2000 years ago. Historians believe that agriculture came first. Farming, surplus, food, permanent settlements, religion, temples. But Göbekli Tepe destroyed that sequence. It suggested the opposite. Religion may have come first, and agriculture followed. Think about that. Rather than building a temple because they had a city, they built a temple so people would gather, settle, and cooperate. Göbekli Tepe may not be a product of civilization. It may be the birthplace of civilization, a place where early humans came together, not to survive, but to worship. And that changed everything. Engineering the impossible now. Imagine what this construction required. The pillars weigh between 6 and 20 tons each, some as tall as 16 feet 5 meters. The stone was quarried from bedrock nearby, but nearby still means shaping, dragging, lifting, placing. There were no domesticated animals, no wheels, no cranes, no metal tools, and yet the builders carved with perfect symmetry. They lifted tonnage that even modern cranes struggle with. This wasn't a small group effort. It required organization, planning, shared vision, leadership, food, surplus, communication, all in an era that supposedly had none of these things. Something is wrong with the timeline we were taught. Göbekli Tepe is evidence that humans were capable of large-scale engineering thousands of years before textbooks claim. But even more puzzling is this. The builders intentionally buried the temple. Not destroyed it, not abandoned it. Buried it carefully, with tons of soil and debris, layer upon layer. Why? Was it a ritual closure? A cultural shift? A spiritual departure? A protective act? Or did they fear something? Whatever the reason, the burial preserved the site almost perfectly, like a time capsule awaiting rediscovery. The pillars, guardians of forgotten knowledge, the carvings at Göbekli Tepe are some of the oldest symbolic representations ever discovered. They depict animals of prey, birds of death, snakes and scorpions, abstract shapes, celestial symbols, humanoid forms. One pillar in enclosure D is particularly striking. A T-shaped figure with arms on its sides, hands resting on its belly, the earliest known representation of a human, but its head is missing. T symbols dominate the site. Was it because humans were thought to be headless, or because the head represented something sacred, or because the T-shape refers to constellations or star maps. Some researchers believe the layout of the pillars aligns with star constellations in the sky around 10,000 BC. Others think the animals represent zodiac-like symbols, a proto-astrological system long before Babylonian or Greek calendars. Some think the symbols record a catastrophic event, perhaps linked to the Younger Dryas climate shift around 10,800 BC. Whatever the truth, Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a place of ritual. It was a place of knowledge, a place where humans began telling stories through stone. A meeting place for the ancients. Evidence suggests Göbekli Tepe was not a settlement. There were no houses, no trash layers typical of villages, no cemeteries or long-term dwellings. Instead, it appears to have been a pilgrimage site, a ceremonial center, a gathering point for tribes, a ritual complex. People may have traveled hundreds of miles to come here. They brought materials, food, and resources. They worked together. They ate together. They performed ceremonies together. Archaeologists found vast numbers of animal bones, primarily gazelle, suggesting large feasts, huge communal events, massive gatherings, possibly rituals of initiation or remembrance. Göbekli Tepe was a magnet, a place powerful enough to pull scattered tribes into unity. In a world without cities, this was the city. In a world without temples, this was the temple. In a world without centralized authority, this was the heart of power. Why was it buried? One of the strangest facts of Göbekli Tepe is not its construction. It's its burial. Over centuries, the site was covered intentionally, not lazily, not naturally, deliberately, perfectly, as if preserving it for the future, or hiding it from one. Some theories propose. 1. Ritual abandonment. When a circle completed its ceremonial life, it was sealed. 2. Cultural shift. A new belief system emerged that viewed the temple as obsolete or dangerous. 3. Climate change. The end of the last ice age forced people to leave, burying sacred sites as an offering or farewell. 4. Protection. Perhaps something threatened the temple: invaders, natural disaster, or internal conflict. 5. Transition to agriculture. Once farming began in the region, the need for ritual gathering sites diminished. Yet none of these theories explain the precision of the burial, nor its scale. Göbekli Tepe feels like a message, a monument intentionally preserved, a whisper across 12,000 years, a secret waiting to be understood. The forgotten builders who built Göbekli Tepe, we don't know their names. We don't know their stories. We don't know their language. But we know their legacy. They were the first to carve belief into stone, the first to unite tribes in shared purpose, the first to look at the stars and see myth, meaning, order. Göbekli Tepe is not just a monument. It is the turning point where humanity shifted from scattered survival to civilization, where people first asked the question, what lies beyond us? And then answered it with stone. What else lies beneath the hill? Here's the most astonishing part. Only 5% of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated. 95% remains underground. Radar scans show additional enclosures, larger circles, more pillars, possibly multi-level structures, interconnected complexes, vast extensions around the hill. Göbekli Tepe is not a site. It is a city-sized ritual complex. A world built before the world of cities, and buried before it could be forgotten. Göbekli Tepe shows us the dawn of organized religion. But our next journey takes us somewhere darker, into ancient stone chambers, built for the dead, built for kings, built for rituals we still can't decipher. Massive structures older than the pyramids, built with stones weighing up to 100 tons, spread across continents. Stand in the presence of a dolmen and you immediately feel it, a silent weight that presses from all directions, not just from the stones themselves, but from the centuries layered within their shadows. These structures look simple on the surface. A few upright stones, and one enormous slab laid across them like a stone roof. But the simplicity is deceptive, because nothing about these creations is simple. Dolmens are among the earliest monumental stone structures in human history. They appear in Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and even parts of Africa. Some of them were standing long before the pyramids were conceived, long before writing, long before kings or kingdoms. And the strangest part, they appear everywhere. Across Ireland's green hills, across Korea's ancient river valleys, across the deserts of Jordan, across the forests of India. across France, Denmark, Spain, Russia, Ethiopia, Syria, thousands upon thousands of dolmens, separated by oceans, separated by cultures, separated by time. Yet almost all of them share the same design, the same architectural language, the same structural logic, the same symbolic presence. How is that possible? Dolmens are a global mystery, a pattern repeated across the ancient world without any known connection between the builders. No shared writing, no shared religion, no shared migration path that we can confirm. And yet, here they are, identical in form, scattered across continents like footprints of a vanished idea. What did these ancient people know that we don't? Why did they build these stone structures with such precision? And what purpose were they meant to serve? Those questions have haunted archaeologists for more than a century. The oldest architecture of the ancients, imagine, traveling back more than 5,000 years, to a time when metals were rare, where most homes were built from reeds, mud, or wood, a time when the wheel itself had barely begun to appear. Yet scattered across this prehistoric world are stone monuments weighing 20, 50, even 100 tons. Some dolmens used stones heavier than the blocks of the Great Pyramid, and that forces us to confront a question. How did people without wheels, without animals of burden, without cranes or pulleys, manage to move stones weighing more than a modern tank, and not only move them, but lift them, balance them, align them, and sometimes shape them with astonishing precision? These weren't ragged stones left where they fell. They were placed deliberately, in formations that required planning, labor, engineering, and communal purpose. Dolmens were not temporary shelters. They were not random experiments. They were not accidental. They were purposeful constructions, the earliest architecture meant to endure. The anatomy of a dolmen: at first, a dolmen seems straightforward, two or more upright stones, called orthostats supporting a large flat stone, the capstone. But when you look closer, deeper patterns emerge. 1. Orientation: dolmens often align with sunrise or sunset on solstices. Lunar cycles, star paths, cardinal directions. These alignments hint at early astronomy or ritual significance tied to the sky. 2. Hidden chambers: many dolmens were originally covered by earth or small stones, forming burial mounds. Over time, erosion stripped away the outer layers, leaving only the stone skeleton behind. Inside these chambers, archaeologists have sometimes found human remains, pottery, tools, beads, burned bones, animal offerings. Yet, in many dolmens, no bones remain, no artifacts, no signs of burial, which raises a chilling possibility. Some of these structures were never tombs at all. 3. Acoustic properties: in many dolmens, sound behaves strangely. A whisper becomes amplified. A hum resonates. A spoken word seems to vibrate the entire chamber. Were these places designed for ritual chanting, ceremonies, shamanic trance, communication with ancestors or gods? The architecture suggests purpose, not accident. Ireland's portal tombs, gateways to the dead. Let us start where the mist never quite lifts. Ireland. Across its myth-soaked countryside stand more than 1,000 dolmens, known locally as portal tombs. One of the most famous is Pawnabron Dolmen in the Burren. Its capstone weighs nearly 70 tons and seems to hover impossibly above 3 slender supports. Beneath it, archaeologists discovered the remains of more than 30 individuals, men, women, children, along with stone tools and pottery. Yet, the bones didn't belong to a single moment. They had been carried there over centuries. This wasn't a family grave. It was a ritual site, a place where the living came to meet the dead, perhaps even to communicate with them. Irish mythology speaks of thin places, places where the boundary between worlds grows fragile. Pawnabron feels like one of those. You can stand before it and sense why people would travel miles to leave their dead in its shadow. Yet Ireland's dolmens share uncanny similarities with dolmens thousands of miles away. How? Why? What common thread unites them? The Korean megalithic puzzle. Korea has more dolmens than any other place on earth, over 30,000 of them. Some are the size of houses. Some tower above the landscape like miniature fortresses. Some have capstones weighing over 100 tons. No one knows why Korea became such a center of dolmen construction. But the patterns are unmistakable. They often mark elite burials. Some align with astronomical events. Many contain ritual objects, and all require engineering beyond what early Korean societies were believed capable of. The Korean dolmens challenged the idea that megalithic engineering spread from the Middle East outward, because Korea's dolmens often appear to be older, or at least developed independently. This raises an unsettling question. Is it possible that dolmen building was not a single cultural invention but a universal human impulse, a sacred architectural instinct, a kind of prehistoric language we all once spoke? Dolmens of the Middle East. A forgotten landscape of stone. Drive into the deserts of Jordan, Israel, or Syria, and you enter a landscape dotted with dolmens. Some collapsed, some standing, all ancient. These dolmens stretch across barren fields like silent guardians. Many Middle Eastern dolmens feature stone-lined corridors, multi-chamber tombs, carved openings, cup marks, geometric symbols, and some contain human remains dating back 4,000 to 6,000 years. But here's the twist. In this region, dolmens appear before the cultures traditionally credited with large-scale construction. Before the Canaanites, before the Hittites, before the early Israelites, before the Arameans, who, then, built them. Nomads, unknown tribes, a forgotten culture erased by time. Without texts or inscriptions, the dolmens speak only through stone, yet their message remains encrypted. India and Africa. Dolmens at the edge of memory. India's southern states, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil, Nadu, hold dolmens that blend burial and ritual. Some have entrance doors carved into the stone. Others contain paintings. A few are positioned near stone circles or menhirs, suggesting ceremonial complexes. In Ethiopia and Somalia, dolmens appear again. Similar style, similar engineering, similar scale. And again, the peoples connected with these structures left little written record. Everywhere dolmens appear, they whisper the same story. A shared design, a shared purpose, a shared worldview, but separated by thousands of miles. Who taught them? How did the idea spread, or was it never spread at all? Engineering mystery. Moving mountains without machines. Let's pause and consider the impossible. You are living 5,000 years ago. No wheels, no metal tools, no complex mathematics, no pulleys or cranes, no draft animals in many regions. Yet you and your people must quarry stones weighing 20 to 100 tons, transport them miles, lift them upright, angle them perfectly, balance a capstone precisely atop them, ensure the chamber doesn't collapse. This is not guesswork. This is engineering. Engineering that supposedly came long after these structures were built. So, how did they do it? Theory 1. Earthen ramps and rollers. Builders could have constructed long ramps of soil, dragged the stones up, and then removed the soil afterward. This is plausible for some dolmens, but ramps require immense labor, much more than local populations could provide. Theory 2. Log rollers, but in treeless regions like Jordan. Where did the logs come from? Theory 3. Water transport. Stones might have been floated on rafts during rainy seasons. But again, many dolmens are far from water. Theory 4. Communal ritual effort. Perhaps entire populations gathered seasonally to build these structures as part of religious events, feasts, rites of passage, or ancestor festivals. This ties the construction to spirituality, not practicality, and that raises another possibility. Theory 5. Sound, ritual, and ancient technology. Some researchers believe dolmens have acoustic properties that amplify voices or induce trance-like states. Could ancient builders have used sound rituals to coordinate mass labor? Or did the structures themselves serve as ritual echo chambers designed to channel voice into vibration? We don't know, but we do know this. Dolmens were built with intention, not accident, which means the people who built them were not primitive, not disorganized, and definitely not simple. They possessed knowledge we have not yet rediscovered. Were dolmens tombs or portals? The most common explanation is that dolmens were burial chambers, and yes, some contain bones, but many do not. Many show no signs of burial. Many have entrances clearly designed for the living, not the dead. So what else could they be? A. Portals between worlds. Many ancient cultures believed stone chambers were doorways to the afterlife. Dolmens may have served as spiritual gateways, places where shamans communicated with ancestors, barrio astronomical aligned with solstices or moonrises. They may have marked time for early farmers and tribal societies. C. Ritual chambers. Their acoustic resonance could indicate ceremonial music or chanting. D. Territorial markers. Giant stone monuments, declaring land boundaries or tribal identity. E. Initiation sites, a place where young people underwent rites of passage into adulthood. Each theory explains some domains, none explain all. Which brings us to the biggest puzzle of all, the global megalithic enigma. Why do domains appear? In Ireland, in Denmark, in Russia, in Jordan, in Korea, in India, in Ethiopia, all in the same form. Experts propose two possibilities. 1. Independent invention. Different societies, facing similar spiritual needs, independently invented the same structure. Possible, but unlikely on this scale. 2. A shared ancestral idea, an idea carried by migrating groups thousands of years before written history began. If true, this would imply a prehistoric cultural network, shared ritual tradition, forgotten migration pattern, or lost civilization that predates all known cultures. Dolmens may be the final surviving clues of a world older than history remembers. We've explored dolmens, the stone skeletons of ancient belief. But our next chapter leads somewhere even stranger, into the birthplace of Mesopotamian civilization, where archaeologists uncovered a set of figurines unlike anything else on Earth. Humanoid bodies, reptilian faces, long eyes, scaled features, infants with lizard heads cradled in their arms. Artifacts 7,000 years old. Found in temples and homes. Linked to unknown rituals. If you were walking through the sun-baked plains of southern Mesopotamia 7,000 years ago, you would see nothing unusual at first. Mud brick houses. Irrigation channels. Fishermen casting nets into quiet marshes. Farmers tending barley fields. Ordinary scenes from one of humanity's earliest settled cultures. But hidden inside those simple homes, buried beneath temple floors, and tucked into layers of ancient soil, something extraordinary was waiting. Small figures. Clay figurines. Humanoid bodies, but with reptilian heads. Long, almond-shaped eyes. Elongated snouts. Smooth, scaled features, and in some cases, mothers holding infants with the same strange, lizard-like faces. These are the Ubaid lizard figurines, artifacts that defy everything we think we know about early Mesopotamian culture. They come from the Ubaid period, a time before the Sumerians, before writing, before kings ruled in Ur and Eridu, a time when civilization itself was still taking shape. And yet, these figurines look nothing like ordinary prehistoric art. They look deliberate. They look symbolic. They look alien. For over a century, scholars have studied these artifacts. They've mapped their locations, analyzed their clay, compared their shapes, and traced their stylistic patterns. But the truth remains elusive. What were these reptilian figurines meant to represent? Were they gods, priests wearing masks? Mythical beings? Spirits or ancestors? Symbolic animals? Or something we haven't considered? This mystery begins in 1919, in a place where civilization itself was born. A discovery beneath the dust. The story starts at Tel el-Ubad, an archaeological mound in southern Iraq. A British team excavated the site, expecting to find remains from the earliest stages of Mesopotamian life. What they didn't expect was this: figurines with human bodies and reptilian heads. Some were male, some were female. Some were carrying lizard-headed infants. Some were seated as if in positions of authority. Some were standing, gripping staffs or holding their hands in ritual poses. But all shared the same distinct trait: faces that looked nothing like humans. At first, archaeologists assumed these figurines were unusual but isolated, perhaps ritual objects from a local cult. But as excavations continued across Eridu, Yucca, and other Ubaid settlements, more figurines surfaced, dozens of them. Different cities, different layers of soil, different time periods. One consistent artistic theme: whatever these figures represented, they were not a local accident. They were part of a widespread belief system. A belief system now lost. The civilization behind the masks. To understand the figurines, we must understand the people who made them. The Ubaid culture, roughly 5000 to 4000 BC, predates the Sumerians by centuries. These were the people who built the earliest temples, created irrigation systems, established the first villages that grew into cities, developed early forms of social hierarchy. practiced long-distance trade across Arabia and the Persian Gulf. They lived in reed-roofed houses, worshipped in T-shaped temples, and buried objects with symbolic meaning beneath their floors. They were among the first to build monumental structures in the region. Not huts, temples, not small shrines, large sanctuaries with altars, courtyards, and ritual spaces. These people were organized, skilled, connected. Their culture lasted more than 1,000 years. And in the heart of that culture, the reptilian figurines appear over and over. Clearly, these objects mattered. They weren't toys. They weren't random art pieces. They weren't decorative ornaments. Their careful design suggests ritual importance, symbolic meaning, or cultural significance. But the secret meaning remains hidden, because the Ubad left behind no writing. Everything we know must come from what they buried. And what they buried is deeply strange. A closer look at the figures themselves. When archaeologists examined the figurines more closely, several startling patterns emerged. 1. The eyes are long, almond-shaped, and slanted dramatically, unlike any human depiction of that period. They dominate the face, giving an intense, almost hypnotic appearance. 2. The snout. The noses are small or non-existent. The snout is extended. Some mouths form tight slits. Others show sharp cuts that resemble reptile jaws. 3. The heads. Some heads are smooth. Some have ridges. Some have crests along the top. Every variation still retains the reptilian character. 4. The body is human. Clearly human. Long legs. Bent elbows. Detailed clothing. Some figurines have belts, dresses, or cloaks carefully etched into the clay. 5. The infants, perhaps the most disturbing subset, depicts mothers holding infants with lizard heads. This is rare in ancient art. Most prehistoric cultures idealized motherhood, rounded forms, nurturing poses, symbolic fertility. But a mother holding a reptilian infant, that is unique, unprecedented, and deeply puzzling. Who or what were these figurines meant to depict? Were they gods? Many archaeologists argue the figurines represent deities. In early Mesopotamia, gods often embodied forces of nature: water, earth, the sky, storms, fertility. Snakes and reptiles were associated with creation myths, water healing, rebirth, the underworld. So perhaps these figurines represent reptile-based gods. But there's a problem. No later Mesopotamian texts mention reptilian deities of this specific form. Even when serpents appear in mythology, they are serpentine, not humanoid. The Ubad figures are something else entirely. Not snakes, not dragons, but human-reptile hybrids. If they were gods, then they were gods who disappeared completely from later tradition. Which is possible, but strange. Civilizations usually carry their gods forward, even as names and forms evolve. So why did these vanish? Were they priests wearing masks? This theory suggests that the figures represent ritual participants wearing stylized masks. There is evidence of mask wearing in early farming societies. Ceremonies involving animal masks, bird masks, mythic spirit masks. So maybe the elongated faces were symbolic headdresses made of cloth, reed, or wood. This makes sense, but it fails to explain the infants. Why would an infant wear a ritual mask? Why depict a baby with a reptile head and small, almond eyes? No known culture makes masks for newborns. So this theory explains part of the mystery, but not the whole. Were they mythical ancestors or spirits? Some scholars believe the reptilian figures were not literal beings, but symbolic representations of ancestors or spiritual forces. Ancient people often depicted ancestors as animals, spirits, as hybrid forms, mythic beings with exaggerated features. In this view, the reptile traits could symbolize wisdom, transformation, connection to water, protection, but again, the consistency is hard to ignore. Dozens of figurines across multiple cities, over centuries, all emphasizing the same lizard-like traits. Symbol or not, this was not a fleeting artistic trend. It was a belief system deeply rooted in Obadite society. Were they people with deformities? This theory appears occasionally in scientific literature. It proposes that the figurines may depict individuals with congenital deformities that elongated the skull or face. But the features are too uniform, too intentional, too stylized. Real deformities vary wildly. They don't produce identical features across hundreds of examples. So we can dismiss this one. The most controversial theory. Something else entirely outside academia. A different interpretation has grown popular. It suggests the figurines might represent a mythology older than we know, or beings that visited or lived among early humans. Some call them reptilian entities, shapeshifters, ancient gods, sky beings, amphibious creatures linked to creation stories now. This theory has no confirmed evidence. It belongs to speculative history, not archaeological fact, and yet, its popularity exists for a reason. Because the figurines look so deliberate, so vivid, so distinct, that many people struggle to believe they were purely symbolic, especially when early Mesopotamian myths include strange beings like the Apkallu semi-Devian hybrid sages, Enki as water creatures, or Ones the fishman who taught human civilization. Are these purely stories?
Or echoes of older beliefs passed down from unknown origins? We don't know, but the connection is intriguing. What the locations tell us, the figurines weren't found in just one type of context. They appeared in temples, homes, graves, administrative buildings, domestic refuse layers. This wide distribution suggests they were not restricted to priests, they were not rare luxury items, they were not isolated to a specific cult, they belonged to everyday life, or at least to everyday belief. Someone in every village would have recognized these figures, understood them, respected them, feared them. Today, we are the outsiders looking in, but to the Ubaid culture, these figures were familiar, meaningful, sacred, important. We just don't know why. The silence of the Ubaid, the greatest barrier to understanding these figurines, is the lack of writing. The Ubaid people did not record their myths. They did not carve their stories on stone tablets. They did not leave inscriptions on their temples. Everything they believed is carried only in clay, and clay alone cannot explain the worldview of a civilization. So we are left with silence. Silence broken only by the strange faces staring back at us across 7,000 years. What if the figurines are clues to a forgotten origin myth? Every civilization has creation stories. In many gods or spirits come from water. Africa es Namo, Mesopotamia es Apkallu, Greece es Triton, India es Nagas, Polynesia es Tangaroa, Sumer es Oannes. Water is life. Waters birth civilizations. Waters hold secrets. The Ubaid lived in marshlands, endless reeds, tidal flats, shallow lakes. Their world was amphibious. Their gods may have been too. Were these reptilian figurines literal depictions, or symbolic representations of mythic water spirits? The truth may be somewhere in between. The Ubaid saw their world through symbols we no longer understand, but the figurines endure unfinished sentences from a forgotten tongue. The Ubaid lizard figurines raise questions about origins, myths, and lost symbolism. But in our next chapter, we shift from clay to stone, to enormous stone structures that stand like ancient bones across the world. Structures so large and so heavy, they defy our understanding of prehistoric engineering. Structures known as dolmens, and the mystery of why cultures separated by oceans all built the same kind of monument. The forgotten fleets of the ancestors they rise from the earth like the ribs of colossal creatures standing stones, arranged not in circles, not in rows, but in the unmistakable silhouette of a ship that cannot sail, a vessel anchored eternally in the soil. These are the stone ships of Scandinavia, and for centuries they have challenged archaeologists, folklorists, and astronomers alike. At first glance, they seem simple, long, narrow formations made of large upright stones, their shapes tapering at either end like bow and stern. But the truth is much more complex, more layered, more haunting than the first impression suggests. Because these weren't just monuments, they were statements about death, about the cosmos, about journeying into worlds we no longer understand. The most famous of them all stands on a windswept hill in southern Sweden, a stone vessel 67 meters long. Ales Stena, the Ales Stones. Nearly 60 boulders arranged in a perfect ship outline, each weighing up to 1.8 tons. The locals call it the Swedish Stonehenge, but it is older, more elegant, and arguably more precise than its more famous counterpart. And Ales Stena is only one example among hundreds scattered across Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. To understand these structures, you have to imagine a world before cities, before literacy, before organized kingdoms. A world in which the boundary between myth and reality was not a line, but an ocean one the ancients believed their dead must cross. The stone vessel of the beyond. For many ancient Scandinavian cultures, the ship was not simply a means of travel. It was the symbol of transition between seasons, between realms, between life and death. The sea was both path and barrier, a highway to distant lands and a final dividing line to the world of spirits. So when a great leader died, whether a chieftain, a warrior, a trader, or a woman of standing their community might raise a stone ship instead of burying them in one. Why? Because a wooden ship rots. A stone ship endures. It guarantees the journey lasts forever. Some stone ships include cremation pits, some hold whole-body burials, others contain no human remains, at all suggesting symbolic burials for people whose bodies were lost at sea, or perhaps ceremonial structures built for rituals we no longer comprehend. The sizes vary wildly. Some are the length of canoes, others, like Ales Stena, are monumental, far larger than any practical ship of the era. This raises an eerie question. Were these ships meant for human souls, or for gods? And why build them from stone at all? Especially when moving those stones would require teams of people, days of effort, and detailed planning. If the purpose was simply burial, a mound or chamber tomb would have been easier. But the builders chose this rows of stones shaped like vessels, pointing toward horizons that mattered, because these ships weren't only symbolic, they were aligned. The astronomy of the ancestors, almost every large stone ship discovered so far displays alignment with celestial events. Some point precisely to the setting winter solstice sun. Others point to sunrise at midsummer. A few aligned with lunar standstills events, so rare and slow that only generations of observation could VE recorded them. This is not coincidence. Ancient Scandinavia was a land of seasons, extremes, and long darkness. Knowing the movements of the sun and moon wasn't simply spiritual, it was survival. These stone ships may have served as massive ritual calendars, places where the community gathered to welcome the first light after the long winter or celebrate the height of summer, when days stretched endlessly. But here's what makes the alignments even more mysterious. The stones are placed with a precision that modern surveying tools confirm. Yet there is no written record of how the builders did this. How did pre-literate societies track celestial cycles so accurately? How did they transport stones weighing tons across rugged terrain? And why are so many stone ships nearly identical in proportion and structure across countries separated by fjords, mountains, and vast forests? This hints at something deeper: a shared tradition, a widespread belief system, or communication networks far more extensive than we assume. The stone ships and the dead. The burial aspect of stone ships is controversial. Some contain cremation remains, others don't. When bones are found, they are sparse and fragmented. This suggests that burial was only part of the story, or perhaps only symbolic. Some researchers propose that stone ships were ceremonial stages, platforms for funerals, for rites of passage, for calling upon ancestors. Others believe they marked territorial claims, each stone ship representing a lineage or clan. But an older interpretation lingers in folklore. The ship was believed to carry the dead not simply westward into the sea, but upward into the heavens. Some legends speak of the skyboat, a vessel that ferries souls to the realm of the gods. And if that seems romantic or mythic, consider this. Many stone ships align not just with the sun, but with constellations. The most common, Orion's belt. In Norse tradition, it was the home of the god Rig, the ancestor of humankind. The same constellation revered in Egypt, in Babylon, in the Americas. Why does Orion appear again and again across ancient cultures that had no contact? Why does this alignment matter so much? We don't have answers, only stones that whisper suggestions. The engineering question. Let's talk about the stones themselves. Many of the upright boulders weigh 1 to 2 tons.
They are often placed at distances, requiring careful measurement to avoid skewing the ship's shape. Some ship formations are so precise that their deviation from a perfect ellipse is less than 1%. This level of accuracy requires knowledge of geometry, understanding of surveying, coordinated labor, a strong social hierarchy. The builders did not randomly place stones. They designed these ships with intent, mathematical, astronomical, symbolic, or spiritual. And how isn't the only question. Why build so many? Why so similar? Why so dispersed? Either this idea spread through slow migration over thousands of years, or it belonged to a cultural mindset so universal that every community adopted it. Is it possible that Northern Europe shared a more interconnected ritual world than the archaeological record shows? Or is this simply what humans do, repeating sacred patterns across time, across continents, across eras? The missing pieces of the puzzle. Stone ships raise two major mysteries. 1. Who were they built for? Not kings alone. Not warriors alone. Many contain remains of ordinary people. 2. What ritual demanded ships of stone, and why these exact shapes, these scales, these alignments? One particularly puzzling discovery is that some stone ships were expanded over time, enlarged, stones added, shape refined, as if each generation renewed an ancient promise. Some stone ships face east, towards sunrise, others face west, towards sunsets symbolic of death. But a minority face north toward the star Polaris, the eternal navigator. These northern-facing ships break the pattern entirely, hinting at local beliefs we can no longer recover. Perhaps the strangest find came from a dig in Denmark, where a stone ship was discovered with no human remains, but dozens of animal bones, from horses to dogs to deer. A ritual feast, a sacrifice, offerings to the gods. Whatever happened here, it wasn't simple burial, it was ceremony. A question that still haunts archaeology: why are stone ships so consistent across vast distances? Same shape, same proportions, same alignment traditions, same association with burial, astronomy, and ritual, yet no writing. No carvings, no instructions left behind. We have a pattern without a storyteller. Were these vessels meant to carry the dead to the realm of the gods? Were they solar calendars carved into earth? Were they symbols of identity, lineage, or clan? Or did they preserve a myth older than the Norse, older than the Bronze Age, older than writing itself? We stand in front of these stones and we know one thing: they were not built for the living, they were built for the crossing. A voyage from this world to the next, and though the people who raised them are gone, their stone fleets remain anchored in fields, forests, and hillsides, waiting for a wind that never comes, witnessing centuries pass, as silently as the dead they honor. Standing before a stone ship, you can feel the presence of something ancient, older than nations, older than myth, older than memory. But if sculpted stone vessels tell the story of how our ancestors honored the dead, what happens when the land itself becomes a monument? When entire valleys echo with inscriptions, carved by hands we no longer recognize? Because next, we travel to a place where the mountains speak in symbols, the petroglyph labyrinths that stretch across continents, and reveal a language no one has ever fully decoded. The messages carved into stone ***. There are places in the world where the land itself becomes a canvas, where mountainsides, canyon walls, river valleys, and isolated boulders have been carved, pecked, chiseled, and engraved with symbols older than writing, older than cities, older than the histories we tell ourselves. These are petroglyphs, the rock carvings found in almost every corner of the world: North America, Siberia, Africa, Australia, the Arabian deserts, the mountains of Scandinavia, the river valleys of India, the islands of the Pacific. Wherever humans have walked, they have left messages on stone. Some are simple: handprints, spirals, human figures, animals, sun shapes. Others are deeply complex labyrinths, astronomical markers, geometric codes, and scenes that seem to carry entire myths. And in a few rare places, the carvings stretch for miles, as if an entire civilization once used the earth as its library. What is astonishing is not that petroglyphs exist. Humans have always created art, but how similar. Many of the symbols are across continents, separated by oceans: spirals, concentric circles, serpent lines, sunbursts, triangles, human figures with outstretched arms, horned beings, shamanic shapes, star maps. Star maps. Why do these symbols repeat again and again, from the Arctic Circle to the Australian outback? Is this coincidence? Convergent symbolism? A shared psychological pattern? Or does it point to something older, some common tradition humanity carried before we scattered across the world? To understand this mystery, we must look at the petroglyphs not as random artworks, but as messages. Because for the ancient carvers, stone was not merely a medium. It was memory, it was permanence. It was communication meant to last longer than lives, longer than generations, messages for the future carved into the very bones of the earth. The mountains that speak. Let us begin in a place where the petroglyphs speak with an almost overwhelming force: the mountain valley of Tamgali in Kazakhstan. Here, over 5,000 engravings cover the rock sun-headed figures with radiating lines, animals mid-stride, warriors, dancers, and scenes that look astonishingly like rituals. Some carvings are so old they have darkened with desert varnish, blending almost perfectly with the stone. Others are lighter, newer, carved centuries later by different groups, but the style remains strangely consistent. The sun-headed man appears repeatedly. A figure with a human body but a radiant halo, sometimes with arms raised in what looks like blessing or invocation. Some archaeologists interpret him as a solar deity, others see a shaman, a spirit, a mythic ancestor. What's perplexing is that nearly identical figures appear not only here, but across the world: in North America, in the Sahara, in the mountains of Spain, even in Australia, carved by cultures who never met. Why would people separated by tens of thousands of miles all carve radiant human shapes? Did they all simply equate the sun with divine power? Or were they recording something witnessed? Similar mysteries erupt in countless places. In the American Southwest, petroglyphs show spirals aligned with solar events. At Chaco Canyon, a carved spiral lights up precisely at summer solstice, when a dagger of sunlight crosses it. In the Sahara, Rakar shows animals, long extinct, in North Africa, giraffes, crocodiles, testimony to a different world. In Norway, reindeer and fish are carved alongside boats, offering glimpses of Ice Age migrations. And everywhere are spirals. One spiral, double spiral, triple spiral. Triple spiral, spirals with tails, spirals inside circles, spirals that connect to lines, spirals carved thousands of years apart but in the same form. What does the spiral mean? Life, death, the sun, water, a portal, or a memory shared by all humans before we spread across the globe. We stare at these symbols, but their meaning does not slip easily into our modern minds, because these carvings didn't record stories the way writing later would. They recorded ideas, rituals, cosmologies, beliefs, journeys, visions. They were part of something living. The petroglyph labyrinths. Some carvings depict not simple symbols, but labyrinths, mazes etched deeply into stone. In Europe they are found in Sweden, Italy, Spain, and the British Isles. In India, the oldest known labyrinth predates most ancient civilizations. In the Americas, labyrinths appear in the Southwest, in Florida, and on Pacific Islands. What connects these thousands of miles? What civilizational thread ties these carvings together? A labyrinth is not just a shape. It is a journey, one path in, one path out. No dead ends, no choices. A single twisting line that leads to a center. But why carve it into rock? A ritual of transformation. A symbolic death and rebirth. A territorial marker. A map of stars, of seasons, of the underworld. Some archaeologists believe labyrinths were meditation tools, a way to walk mentally through a symbolic landscape. Others believe they were maps of the sun's movement. A few think they were used in rites of passage, guiding initiates through the metaphorical darkness into enlightenment. But the most provocative idea is this: the labyrinth represents a cosmology, a blueprint of how ancient people saw the universe. If so, then why is the pattern nearly identical across continents? Are we seeing independent invention, or the fading echo of a forgotten, shared worldview? We can't be certain, but the consistency is striking. The shamans of the rock walls. Many petroglyphs display figures with antlers, horns, or animal heads. These therianthropes appear in Siberia, in France, in North America, in Africa. Some have wings, some have tails. Some appear mid-transformation, half animal, half human. Anthropologists see these as shamanic visions, representations of powerful spirits, transformation rituals, or trance experiences. But one detail stands out. Many of these hybrid beings appear to be floating, feet lifted off the ground, sometimes surrounded by dots or lines, suggesting energy. Were these depictions of spiritual journeys, visions, dreams, or something else? Some researchers propose these were records of altered states, experiences induced by ritual, dance, fasting, or substances. Others see them as cultural memory, the earliest myths carved into stone. But the presence of so many floating or radiant figures suggests a more profound worldview to the ancients. The boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds was fluid. The petroglyphs were not documenting myths the way we think of them. They were recording experiences, encounters that shaped belief systems for generations. And this raises a different kind of question. What if these petroglyphs are not stories, but instructions? Not depictions, but teachings? A guide for connecting with the unseen world. The astronomical code across multiple continents, petroglyphs display patterns so precisely aligned to celestial events that they cannot be coincidence. Solstice markers, equinox lines, lunar calendars, star maps, constellation diagrams, horizon alignments in Australia. The Vardhaman people carved entire star stories into rock maps of constellations passed down for 10,000 years. In North America, the Chumash carved the Milky Way, the Pleiades, and even what some researchers believe may be supernova. In the Arabian deserts, tens of thousands of petroglyphs depict cattle herds and hunting scenes recording a time when the region was green and full of rivers. In the Altai Mountains, stone carvings are aligned to the North Celestial Pole tracing, the slow wobble of the earth over millennia. The precision is remarkable. These were not random doodles. They were knowledge systems encoded in stone. Knowledge about the sky, knowledge about seasons, knowledge about migrations, knowledge about life and death. And yet, across thousands of sites, the meaning is not written. It must be inferred, guessed, reconstructed, because the ancient world did not speak through words. It spoke through symbols. And symbols require context, now lost. The question of a lost language here. The most perplexing part of the petroglyph mystery, many of the same symbols appear in places that never had contact. Spirals, concentric circles, lines with dots, human figures with halos, animal-human hybrids, boats, grid patterns, triangles. This raises an uncomfortable thought. What if early humans shared a symbolic language before they scattered across the planet? A proto-writing system, a symbolic toolkit, a unified mythos, or perhaps something even older, a visual way of understanding the cosmos inherited from prehistoric ancestors, carried unconsciously across migrations, encoded in stone again and again. We can't confirm such a theory, but we cannot dismiss it either, because the connections are too many, too consistent, too widespread. And when so many cultures carve the same symbols, the same ideas, the same cosmological patterns, there is a story there, a story we no longer understand. The unspoken mystery. Petroglyphs endure because stone endures, but their meaning fades because memory does not. These carvings are the closest thing we have to a prehistoric manuscript, pages torn across mountainsides, scattered across continents, weathered by time. They are a glimpse into human consciousness before history, before writing, before the world became divided by nations and languages. They tell us that ancient people were not primitive. They were observers, storytellers, astronomers, philosophers, mystics. They carved what mattered most: birth, death, sun, moon, the hunt, the journey, the spirits, the cosmos. And they left their messages in stone, trusting that someone someday would understand. We are trying, but the truth remains just out of reach. For now, if petroglyphs are humanity's earliest messages to the future, then our next mystery takes us into a world where the messages weren't carved, but built. Massive earthworks so large you can't even see their shape from the ground. Monuments shaped like animals. Serpents, birds visible only from the sky. Who were they for? What did they mark? And why do so many resemble constellations? The serpent, the geoglyphs, and the civilizations who built for the heavens. There are monuments so large, so spread across the land, so strangely shaped that you cannot recognize them while standing next to them. Up close, they are just hills, or ridges, or mounds of dirt, gentle slopes covered in grass and trees, blending easily into the natural landscape. But rise above them, even 100 meters, and suddenly their shapes emerge with astonishing clarity. A serpent, a giant bird, a humanoid figure stretching its arms to the sky, a circle of earthworks precise enough to challenge modern surveyors. These are not buildings. They are not tombs. They are not fortresses. They are earthworks, vast, sculpted shapes created by ancient cultures long before aeroplanes existed. And yet, the only way to understand them fully is from the air. It's as if their builders were creating for an audience who watched from above. The Great Serpent Mound, a masterpiece of alignment. Let's begin with the most iconic earthwork of North America, the Great Serpent Mound of Ohio, a colossal serpent, nearly 1,400 feet long, coiling and winding across a ridge, ending with a great open mouth, seemingly swallowing ore. giving birth to a giant egg-shaped mound. Its curves are not random, they follow astronomical alignments. The summer solstice sunset, the winter solstice sunrise, the equinox lines. Some believe the serpent's body also reflects lunar cycles, weaving a celestial calendar into the earth. The mound is so vast that you would never understand its shape from the ground. Early European settlers had walked across it for decades without realizing it was a giant serpent. It wasn't until 1846, when Surveyor Ephraim Squire climbed a nearby hill and sketched the ridge from above, that the true form appeared. The moment he saw it, he froze. This was no natural formation. This was a message encrypted in the land itself. But who built it? Archaeologists propose three possibilities. 1. The Adena culture 1000 to 200 BC. 2. The Hopewell culture 100 BC to 500 AD. 3. The fourth ancient culture 1000 to 1650 AD. Radiocarbon dating remains ambiguous. The mound could have been built, rebuilt, or restored multiple times. But the deeper mystery is why. Why a serpent? Why this shape? Why this alignment? In many ancient cultures, the serpent is a symbol of rebirth, the underworld, the cosmos, the path of the sun, or the cycle of life and death. Some Native American traditions speak of a great sky serpent or horned serpent that governs storms, seasons, and celestial forces. Was this mound a calendar, a ceremonial site, a creation myth carved into the land, or something older, memory inherited from a forgotten past? Whatever the answer, the serpent mound is a message built on a scale so large that only the gods or the stars could witness it fully. The Amazon geometric earthworks, the forest that hid a civilization for centuries. The Amazon was believed to be untouched rainforest ends, wild, and never home to large organized societies. That myth dissolved in the 1980s, when satellite images revealed massive geoglyph circles, squares, hexagons, and enormous straight lines etched into the ground beneath the forest canopy across Brazil and Bolivia. Thousands of them. Perfect circles up to 300 meters wide. Square enclosures with berms and ditches carved so cleanly you'd think they were drawn with tools we use today. Interconnecting straight roads stretching 4 kilometers. And the most astonishing fact, most of these earthworks were completely hidden for centuries by the forests. Even locals didn't know they were there. How long has this secret been growing beneath the trees? Carbon dating suggests the earthworks were built between 1000 and 2000 years ago by a culture that somehow supported large populations in a region long assumed inhospitable for complex societies. But here's the catch. There are no surviving stories. No known name, no recorded mythology. No surviving descendants who remember building these geometries. The forest swallowed the culture, but the earthworks remained. Why did they create these shapes? Were they ceremonial plazas, defensive enclosures, ritual landscapes arranged according to astronomy, markers of territory or status? Some researchers propose something even more intriguing. The geoglyphs may have formed a single megastructure, an engineered landscape spanning thousands of square kilometers. Not cities made of stone, but cities made of earth. Cities designed to be felt more than seen. Cities aligned to the heavens. Cities masking a lost cultural identity. If the Amazon once supported millions of people far more than previously believed, then these earthworks are not isolated creations.